Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Fanfiction podcast. Today we will be continuing our journey of what if Belle became the wild child of Freya. Before we start, please like, share and subscribe and comment in the comment section what you want next. Joker girls spar and jealousy. Joker girls spar and jealousy. Tell me sis, is it me or have your tits gotten bigger? Tiona. Now that you mention it, Miss Tiona, Tion's chest does seem a bit bigger since last time we relaxed here. Tell us, what did you go to grow them bigger? The sounds of splashing and women yelling echoed in the steam-filled room. The walls tiled cream color as the water splashing soon fell into a drain at the center of the floor. Squeaking noise was heard along with the splashing and the fall of a bucket as well. In this place, of the Loki Familia's manor, was where the women of the Familia come to unwind after a hard day's work, separated far from any of the men's quarters or even their gods, as signs of magic ruins decorated both the top and bottom borders of the room's walls. For privacy and security, men of this familia say that this room could compete to that of the heavenly palace most would die to step in to see even a glance of the heavenly bathhouse of Orario. This was but a small taste of that divine area for the Loki Familia's women to enter only unless they wished to suffer the wrath of thousands. The Trickster's Spa Resort. Inside, in the late night, was only a small party of 5. All wanting to relax themselves and unwind, taking in the luxuries of their well-deserved bath and privacy. In the large, shared bathtub was the Amazon sisters Tiona and Tion, who were wrestling with each other along with Lephia, as she and Tiona both were envious of Tion's assets and demanded to hear how she improved them, hence both taking the liberty to observe and feel Tion's to confirm if it was just the bath's heat or if indeed they had blossomed well. Over by the edge of the bath, letting herself take comfort in the steaming water, her long wet, green hair floating along the soapy water surface as she relaxed her body, causing her to float a bit and her plump rear to float above the water. Ace, how long are you going to spend shampooing your hair? You've been staring at the mirror long enough that it fogged up again. Sorry Reveria. I'll be right in. Rinse your hair first before you get in. Reveria called over from the bath as Ace looked at the rest of them, filling a bucket of water to the brim before lifting it over her head, dumping the cold water over her soapy golden hair, as she felt it trickling down her face and below her naked body. Repeating it again as to be extra thorough to rid of any soap, she finally stood up and began to walk over to the bath, seeing the 3 wrestling still before entering next to Reveria, lowering herself inside till only her neck and head remained above water as she looked down at her body. You're still a growing girl, Ace. Don't worry about it too much. But how did she get hers to grow bigger? Tell USUGH. My eyes. Why? Why would you squirt soap in my eyes? In the water. Get under the water with me, Miss Tiona. Tiona and Lephia cried as they dove down under the water, furiously scrubbing their face and eyes to rid themselves of the burning sensation in their retinas as Tion leered at them, throwing the small bottle out of the tub as she crossed her arms over her chest. Both of you deserve that. Why do you always go for my chest when we bathe? Because if we touched Mama Reveria's, we'd get our asses kicked. You're damn right. Now shut up. I want to relax before we have to deal with Loki's idiocy later on. Reveria said as she stretched her arms and sunk deeper in the water. Still, what's your secret, sis? Tiona said as she and Lephia got up from the water and leered at Tion's soap-covered tits in envy, all while her sister smirked at the two and placed a finger by her lips. It's something that our dear captain knows the truth about it. You could say that it's because of him these puppies grew. She smirked as she proudly showed her chest off and shook her body, watching the girls growling as her own girls bounced and jiggled in the water. That does it. I'm gonna go get White Hair's help so I can get some of that. Like hell you are, idiot. Reveria shouted as she grabbed Tiona's ankle as she tried to jump out of the tub, throwing her back in as more water escaped the tub and the sound of a rubber duck quacked in the bath. Oh, that reminds me, how did your party with Mr. Cranel go, Miss Tiona? Lephia asked, as she saw Tiona's body floating back up from the water as bubbles were escaping from her mouth. Tiona spat out the water caught in her throat and turned to Hera, with a happy look on her face. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting to tell you about that since you want some advice, her Lephia. And no, it's not that. I just wanted to know a bit more about Freya's new member is all. He seems quite odd, don't you think? Well, at least compared to the other members of their familia. At first I did think about that when we meet him about a week ago. At the hostess. But he made it quite the night. Tyon chimed in as she was blushing at the reminder of what else happened to her that same night. Yeah, white hair's pretty fun. Our first dive together with the party a few days ago was awesome. He really knows how to make it an adventure in the dungeon. Tiona splashed about in her excitement as now Reveria and especially Ace was interested in her story. Get this, sis. White hair found a path that lead us straight to the 11th floor of the dungeon. 1 minute we were at like the 6th floor, and then the next we found ourselves heading down to the 11th. That fast. Such a jump from 6 to 11. How did he find a path? Well, Lefia, it's actually paths. He told us that when he snuck out to look at the dungeon floors when he first joined, he found some paths in the walls that lead to lower and upper floors. That's amazing. Belle found such a handy way to get around the first couple floors of the dungeon. Imagine the time that it could save for people. That's exactly what Haydeen and Hythe were saying. Tiona said as Reveria and A's eyes widened at this information. Having explored the dungeons countless times, never had they heard a shortcut or a path that would cut their travel time to that amount. He found a way to get to the lower floors faster. I wonder if he could show me that path. That way, I can get stronger much faster. A's thought as a glint in her eyes sparkled at the thought of traveling to the dungeon floors faster. Reveria noticed that look from A's and shook her head, thinking to herself ideas of how to prevent A's single-track mind for fighting, but more importantly, to avoid any mishap from Freya's Familia if Ace somehow forced Belle to take her down his secret route. Despite this being advantageous, I can't in good nature allow Ace to force him to show her. Nor should I let Tiona bring Ace down there. Belle Cranel, by all appearances and the way Tiona describes him, he does seem like an earnest and honest boy, aside possibly being related to that brutish elf. She thought bitterly at that last thought as she kept an eye on Ace, while Tiona continued, "Oh, but get this, you know how rarely there's ever any decent monsters on the 11th floor. Belle apparently found a secret floor boss." Tiona exclaimed as Reveria had to force Ace down, under the water, head first. To prevent the blonde from jumping at Tiona to demand answers, Reveria looked at the three in front of her, ignoring the bubbling water below and the flailing arms raising above the water to grab hold of anything around. Lefia's eyes widened, and her lips parted a bit from the impressed news, while Tyon's reaction was that of curiosity. A hidden floor boss. What did he do to make it appear? HRNGH, first the lower floor, traveling and now this. How is it a rookie is discovering things that most of us should have discovered by now? Lefia grumbled as she sank lower in the bath, to the point she was making bubbles under the water with her mouth. Oh, Tilda, do I detect a bit of jealousy, Lefia, or perhaps you're crushing on Belle? Tyon said, as that brought the elf to stand tall and flail her arms out, her face red as a tomato as she was waving her hands in front of Tyon. She smiled as she then took a quick glance at her own sister, and did she enjoy the look on her face? It was as though all life was lost in her eyes, only an empty look as she was still smiling. Somehow, her whole body, face and hair had turned to a pure white color all while. Lefia was flabbergasted and tried to get the words out to deny her claim. Calm down, Lefia, I'm only teasing. Now, what else happened, Tiona? How'd he find this floor boss? Alright, the floor boss. Well, he used a monster attract item he stored in with their bags, and that attracted a lot of monsters. He then came up with the idea to make it a game to bring out the boss. First team to get most kills and the losers treat the winners to Jagamaru. Kuns afterwards. Jagamaru. Diak. Lady Reveria or Mama. Lefia, Tiona and Tyon shouted in worry as they saw Reveria being flipped over the bath and now lying stark naked outside and wet on the soaked tile floor. Their attention soon brought over to A's as the blonde had a dark look in her eye as she was only a few centimeters away from Tiona's face. You fought a new floor boss with others. A's. You're a bit too close. You fought with the rabbit together in the dungeon. A's. Be back up a bit, please. Why your eyes? Your eyes are starting to get darker and creepy. And you ate Jagamaru-kuns together. Sis. Lefia. Mama. Someone help me. Tiona said as now she was looking away from A's, trying to escape her dark gaze, but the blonde kept coming closer and closer to her. Will you quit creeping them out, you blonde idiot? Reveria said as she grabbed a nearby Bucker and slammed it on top of A's head, making the girl sink down under the water, before having her hair pulled to be brought back up, with the addition of a large bum protruding from the top of her head as Reveria sat back down in the bath with a scowl. I felt like she was about to suck my soul from my body. Tiona breathed out as she had a hand over her heart with Tyon hugging her and Lefia patting her back as they slowly pulled her further away from A's as she was being busy tied up with bath towels by Reveria. So, that was the bet made by Mr. Cranel. Did you end up winning? Lefia asked as to try and distract her from the horror she witnessed and get back to the story. HNGH. No tilde. It was me, Huluin, Freya's attendant, and Hythe in one team with Bell and his pops against us. By the time we reached the floor itself, we had about 24 kills. Mostly with me while Hythe and Huluin tag teamed against some ogres and kobolds getting too close. And how many did Bell get? I think what his pops said it was about 6 to something. I couldn't remember the exact number, but the way he fought was pretty impressive. It kinda reminded me of us when we're fight sis. Tiona said as Tyon blinked and leaned in closer with a smirk. Ho, tell me, what did you see about Bell and fighting? It was like us when we hop around monsters and kill them. He was swinging his hatchet around and his knife, both weapons in hand, and he was killing them one by one without stopping. It looked as though he was dancing in a rain of blood. So you think he's a good dancer then? Thinking of asking him if there's ever an opportunity. She teased as Tiona blushed, her own sister using her own words against her for her little games. Feeling betrayed as Lefia stood in silent with a flushed face. That rabbit is seducing you, Miss Tiona. You need to be careful unless he puts his hands on you soon. He does have soft hands. Lefia, Tyon, and Reveria asked at the sudden comment spoken by Tiona without a hint of hesitation after Lefia's assumptions. Realizing her mistake, she covered her mouth with one hand and waved her other before them to try and stop their assumptions. He touched you. Reveria and Lefia yelled as they came closer and closer to Tiona, with shocked looks on their faces, and for Reveria looking absolutely livid, while Tyon smiled with glee as she looked happy at her sister. Oh, how was he? Was he gentle with you? Did it get spicy? Did you two sneak away from the Otha dash? It wasn't like that, I swear. Honest. It was an accident when we were taking the shortcut to the 11th. She yelled at the three of them, her face completely red and her eyes swirling from the heat of the bath and such thoughts they implied about her and Bell. Then talk. Reveria said with a scornful look at her as Lefia grabbed the nearest bucket as her eyes were shadowed by her wet orange hair, having a look as though she would castrate a rabbit if the answer wasn't satisfactory. Well, I said I'd keep the way we took a secret, but all I can tell you is that the path was a bit tricky to travel and there was some slippery flaws, she said as she paused for a moment, waiting on Reveria and Lefia to understand as they nodded for her to continue. So, me, Pops and Huluin were about to crash, and Bell and Hythe were coming fast and couldn't stop. I was ready to block them from crashing into us badly while Bell's Pops was breaking our speed. We were safe, but we still bumped into each other. Tiona said as she was getting redder by the second as now she had no choice but to tell the rest of it. I sort of fell on top of him, and I couldn't stop myself so Bell put his hands on my waist to stop me from falling further, while I stopped on his shoulders, with my chest in his face. She said as her voice was softer and softer with each word until she covered her face and shook her head. I see. It was an accident. I understand that. Well, given your nature and your traditions, I worried about it. But next time please be more careful. Lefia, put the bucket away. By the sound of it, Mr. Cranel did not mean to do anything more than assist her. Reveria said as she looked at Lefia with a dull look until she tossed the bucket away. Anyways, so Mr. Cranel is quite adept in fighting. Granted, we don't know exactly how long he's been exploding the dungeons unsupervised, but it is quite the feat, Reveria chimed in her assessment view of Tiona's description of Bell's fighting style. Yeah, it was mesmerizing that we were lost in thought when the ground started to shake. From the floor boss appearing, we were on guard, but it blew us away when we saw that giant beast. Tiona said as she raised her arms high above her head in emphasis to the size. It was a baby dragon that was on the 11th floor, and it was the same one that Bell mentioned earlier. He left a bunch of scars on it when he went down to investigate the 11th floor before, but he couldn't fight it since his knives apparently broke during then. She said as Lefia's eyes widened as Riveria and Tino looked amused. He fought a baby dragon by himself before. Curse that rabbit. How does he find such rare things in the dungeon? I detect love and jealousy, Lefia Tilda. I am not jealous. But you're not denying being in love with him. Ara. We all decided that it would be fun to end today's dive by fighting it. And man, it was. Awesome. We even brought back the head to the guild, and Belle's pops was nearly dying at the look of Aina's face. Tiona snickered as she recalled Aina nearly passing out when they entered the guild all covered in blood and dragging the head inside. I did recall hearing about the mess of blood at the guild, though I offer my condolences to Aina. But she was insistent about trying to be an advisor again, and now has to deal with Mr. Cranel's antics now while that one takes the enjoyment out of it. Riveria sighed at the thought of Aina now having grey hairs due to Belle's dives in the foreseeable future. So how much did you end up paying for their Jagamaris? Nangrush. Ace cried from the other side of the bath. As the three of them, aside, Riveria looked over at the now tied Ace, in a rather risque style of bondage with her mouth gagged by a rubber duck. Actually, we just ended up buying one for ourselves each. We also got quite a bit of money from it, though it was less than the actual value. Belle ripped off some parts of the dragon and gave it to us. He did. Doesn't he know how valuable the whole head would have been worth if he left it as is? Lefia said as she was feeling a bit prideful the fact that Belle did something foolish. Yeah, but he said, why not take a piece of this drop as a memento of our first dive together? As a party. This'll be a great story to tell our family and loved ones someday when we're older. Well, maybe aside from Pops. So he gave us them as mementos. Ah, that's pretty sweet of him. So, tell us, what did he give you? A tooth? A horn? Or did he make some of the scales into a necklace for you? Tyon asked her sister in excitement, as she had pink hearts in her eyes. Sis, ease up on the honeymoon phase, all right. He kinda gave me some of the teeth, and a cut part of its horn, and said it'd be good for a necklace. He got the same things too. Otilda matching jewelry is but a first step. Are you trying to set them up, you idiot? Come on, Mama. If me and Captain are going to have kids soon, then I want my sister to start finding a man so that way I can become an aunt. I think we've lost her. What else did he give to the others in the party? Lefia said as all of them was stunned at how lovey-dovey Tyon was becoming lately. Well, for Hythe she was given a horn to help with making stronger potion effects. Huluan was scared the way Belle gave her share, as he was ripping off scales from its head cops. He suggested it could be made to make a special throwing knife for her or maybe a necklace. I'm curious in what he thought to give for that brute of an elf he calls Pops, Riveria pondered, though snarled the word Pops at the end, making Lefia and Tiona shiver from how cold she sounded. I thought it was a pretty thoughtful gift. He gave his Pops one of the dragon's eye, and was going on how cool it would be to embed it into his staff and make him look cooler when casting spells. I don't know what he ended up doing with it though. Tiona said as she looked up at the roof of the bathhouse and thought, oh, a dragon's eye in his staff, that sounds like it would look cool. Come now, Tyon, such a thing would be childish. I'd imagine that his partner Hogni would do that, but him? No, I dub dash. True. Belle Cranel did think of a nice gift for him. A dragon's eye would look enticing on a magic user, and it has been speculated that eyes of mythical creatures can increase magic spells or mana to the caster. Riveria blinked and looked horrified the fact that Lefia, her student in magic and eventual successor, was in agreement with the two Amazons about the boy's gift. A pit of uneasiness was felt in her stomach as she feared if idiocy was contagious. I have to wonder, are they actually related? Lefia asked as Tiona and Tyon looked at her in confusion and blinked. Lord Haydeen and Belle Cranel. I often hear about him calling him Pops. And the way you make it sound, they really do seem like father and son. But why is it at times I've heard him deny such claims? Lefia pondered as that brought Tiona to try and think of an answer while Tyon smiled. Well, honestly I don't think it matters that much. Take it like how we always call Riveria Mama. Every familiar has that one or two parental figures for the familiar as whole. I think Belle does see Haydeen as a somewhat parental figure, though the nickname I heard from Anya at the hostess that it was because Belle immediately assumed he was old like a grandpa. You think that could just be it, sis? I mean, recall how they look. Hayden kinda has white hair, even though it's blonde. He's got those red eyes. And I remember seeing them act stubborn and butting heads with each other. It's like they are father and son. Well, elves do live longer lives. So, maybe he could actually be Mr. Cranel's biological father. But perhaps they were separated. Lefia suggested as that got interest in both Amazons and made Reveria shake her head as she walked over to A's side and began to untie her. Don't take this as truth, but it is somewhat heard about. Elven marriages are a rather strict and complex tradition, somewhat like royal weddings and engagements. But if it was with a mixed race, then it becomes somewhat a sad tale. You think that Belle's pops had to leave him behind with his mom? I'll put him up in an orphanage. But why? Tiona exclaimed as she splashed the water underneath her. I'm not saying that, but rather it could be something similar. Mixed marriages are an issue if both families are against it. Perhaps Sir Hayden had issues in getting approval and lost the rights to tend to his family. How heartbreaking, forced to leave his wife and son. Sniffle to never see them again or even raise him as his own. Why must traditions of your people be so cruel? Tyon exclaimed, as she shook Lefia's shoulders back and forth as tears were falling from Tyon's eyes. It's more with the higher and nobility side of our race. Honestly, I despise the part where our people look down upon others just because they are elves and believe themselves to be higher than all. Gah, it's irritating, Lefia said through her shaken tone as she felt disgusted. At the thought of such a tragedy Belle must have gone through. Whatever occurred with them isn't our business to pry unless otherwise. Give them their privacy and respect their wishes if they don't want to talk about it, Reveria said as she brought Ace alongside her and sat back down next to the three. Say, Tiona, when are you going back in the dungeon with the rabbit again? Ace asked with a hint of curiosity and excitement in her voice. Rabba, you mean Belle, or as I call him White Hair if you paid attention. Best not to call him that, Ace. He gets annoyed by that nickname. And not for a while at least. I've got plans. With all you for a few days, remember. Tiona said as she crossed her arms behind her head and leaned back. Besides, why do you ask? Are you interested in his secret path? She said as A's eyes widened and Reveria sighed, smacking A's head as that caused Tiona and Tyon to giggle at how open and how poorly A's tried to hide her intentions. You're bad at trying to hide things, A's. And, I don't know. He's still mad at you for what you took from him. Tiona said as Ace tilted her head to the side in confusion, before it dawned on her what she meant. Oh, the Minotaur. But he would have gotten hurt. He had it under control until you took away his fight. It's like if someone took away your Jagamaru-kun when you were about to pay for it, only for someone to buy it and take it away from you. See what I hhhh. Who dares take away my Jagamaru-kun? Mema. The eyes are taking my soul. Enough. Reveria shouted as she punched Ace again on the head, but this time, turning her over to the edge of the pool, forcing her to lean over it so her ass was sticking out. As Reveria began to smack the ever-wet ass with such brutality and force. Harsh and repetitive slapping sounds echoed in the bathhouse with such vigor and pain due to the added wetness. The other three could only shield their eyes and wince from the pleading and crying of Ace to stop, begging Reveria to cease this punishment, but was only meet with more spankings and punches atop her head. Enough with your unhealthy obsession. Learn to control yourself with your snack otherwise. I'll ban you from eating them for the next 3 months. Reveria roared as Ace sank back into the water with tears on her puffy red eyes as she meekly nodded. And as for your little attempt to join Belle Cranel's party, I won't allow it unless you make amends to him or I join with you to keep an eye on you. Reveria said as though it was law. For A's. Oh oi, mama, isn't that? Tyon, look at this idiot before you. If she found a way to get to deeper floors, would she have the control to use it responsibly? She asked as all three of them gave A's a deadpan look as though meaning they didn't believe in her. Furthermore, I do not want her to take advantage of Mr. Cranel's hard work and findings. They were discovered by him, so it's his decision to share it or hide this fact. I won't press you further where he found this, Tiona. But rest assured we will be keeping this a secret, she said, as she harshly looked at Ace to further clarify it with her. So, unless I make amends first, then I can go in the dungeon with Belle. Ace said, now, ignoring the large steaming lump on her head. The four of them looking at her in surprise, of how she actually sounded smart at that moment. Well, just don't get your hopes up or expect it to happen soon. We won't see each other until maybe Monsterphilia or the days before it happens. Tiona said as she soon got out of the water and exited the tub. Oh, Tilda, did he invite you out to see the festivities together? Tyon teased as she was greeted, back by her sister sticking her tongue out at her. Well, not exactly. He did say we should hang out together if we see each other there. Truth is that they are gonna meet his goddess at the festivities after she's finished with some urgent business. Ah, an outing with his goddess. Sounds nice. I pray for his sake his goddess isn't worse than ours. Lefia said as the thought of Freya acting like Loki towards Belle made her shiver a little despite the hot water she was soaking in, silently praying as she held one hand up to pray to whomever for Belle's sake. I think it's kinda sweet. I heard that Hayden and most of the executives are gonna follow Belle, and Hulluin to oversee them during the festivities. So it's like a chaperone trip. Reveria said as she smirked at the thought Hayden having to keep the idiots of his familia in line now during all the fun. Either way, we might get to see him around the festival. You wouldn't mind if we joined them if possible? Tiona asked as the others soon got out of the bath and reached for a nearby towel hanged up on the racks against the wall. Nope. I kinda look forward to how fun we'd have with them. And besides, I wanna see how Crazy Belle will drag his familia all over the place like what you were telling about Hayden. What about you, Lefia, opposed to hanging out with Belle? And no, I wouldn't mind it. It would be quite interesting and maybe I could ask Lord Hayden about a few things. How about it, Miss A's? You would be able to HHUH. Lefia shouted, as she then saw A's looking dead and in a fetal position on the floor. I can't make amends. I'm being forced to serve as Lady Loki's guard that day for some business she's meeting with. Ace said with a monotone voice as she wouldn't move, even when they tried to shake her, leaving Reveria to sigh and drag her by the hair. A's ass squeaking against the wet tile floor. As they watched their sister being dragged and her ass now turning red with each second, they silently prayed for the suffering she would soon endure from both Reveria at the punishment she would receive due to her one-track mind during this bath, and for having to be by Loki's side for an entire day. Chapter notes. Days with a rabbit, otter. See the end of the chapter 4. Notes. Days with a rabbit, otter. I know you basically strong-armed me to making your child a weapon. The sound of fire kindling and the echoing of a hammer striking metal vibrated in the dim-lit room, embers flying up before disappearing into smoke and ash, and sparks flying from the strike of iron on the anvil. Hephaestus' face covered in sweat, but she didn't look bothered by it. Being a god of blacksmithing, she was used to it, not minding the heat or the sweat she was covered in. The heavy weight of her own personal hammer that could kill mortals was nothing, as she grew used to the weight. And you said you wanted it ready before Monsterphilia in about over a week. But why do you suddenly make these random visits to my shop? She screeched as she hammered away the material before looking over her shoulder to see Freya there, sitting on a stool with her legs crossed over another as she just sat there, smiling and waving at the red-headed goddess without a care in the world, or even looking bothered by the heat, or remarked at her harsh tone. I said I would put part of me into my Belle's weapon, which you already gave me your hair and blood. Why the hell would you even offer to have me put your orgasm fluids to make this thing? God, I ought to make a bat to smack you upside the head and hope that gets rid of your horniness. But I didn't hear you complaining until after I stopped using your desk to dash. Enough. I saw it. I don't need a reminder of it. And I had to burn my desk now, thank you very much. You're welcome. That just means we can break in your new one after I've rewarded you for your hard work, Tilda. Freya, I swear to Tenkai. A bat. Bash your head in with it. In a barrel. Off a cliff. And watch as you get sent back up there. She yelled at the goddess of beauty as she was, repeatedly striking the material with her rant in sync. Silence came soon after, as all that could be heard in the room for a while was the sounds of the fire crackling in the kiln, then the screeching sound of water boiling for a moment as the hot material was dipped in shortly before moving back into the flames. Why do you constantly make these return trips to watch me work? She asked as she looked at Freya with a tired, deadpanned expression as she saw the god stretching her hands out, never looking away from the confusing god with her one good eye as she saw a nostalgic yet happy look on Freya's face. Well, partly because I feel like you could use the company. It would get so lonely for you, especially with your familia always head down on their own projects. Freya began as that. Felt like an arrow going through Hephaestus's chest. How does she know what to say and why is she right? Any more reasons? She asked, trying to ignore the painful truth, feeling she had now thanks to Freya's words. Well, Tilda, I kinda wanted to talk about how my familia is doing since Belle joined. Tilda, so you're here to brag about it then. Why not just go back and have one of your children listen as you ramble on, you perv? Mao. Then how are they supposed to bond if I'm taking them away from Belle? Hephaestus. You simple-minded dummy. Freya pouted cutely as she waved her arms and flailed about on her stool as Hephaestus tsk'd and continued with her work. Fine. Tell me what's so different about your children now while I work. Can't be that much different, Hephaestus said as she pulled out the red-hot material out of the kiln now and began to hammer it again with her tools. See, I knew you'd be interested. I suppose I should talk about Otter now. He's honestly been smiling more and even has a lesson plan class for some of my lower-level children. Freya said as Hephaestus was taken by surprise and missed her strike of her hammer, falling over the anvil. Otter, your captain, the man known in this city as King and Orario's strongest adventurer, smiling and teaching your weaker members. Hephaestus said as she was baffled to even believe if that was true. Yep. What on earth did this new child of yours do to make him even smile? She asked with a small hint of terror in her voice as she went back to work, looking up at the ceiling with a small smile as she recalled back to her peeping and informed activities of Otter and Belle from Hayden. She looked back to Hephaestus and leaned back against the wall. How about I tell you while you work? It's a bit long, so I'll try to minimize the filler. Freya said as that got the smithing god to look puzzled. Wait, what, Phil Dash? Now our story of how Otter became more active and livelier with my other children, thanks to Belle, begins just like how any other story begins, with a little boy getting beaten with a broadsword. She began to tell, ignoring the bewildered look from Hephaestus. Flashback begins. Otter had seen many things over his years in Orario, being one of the few that lived during Orario's dark ages. The brawls on the streets of rivaling familias, the power struggles each had and many would go about to kill in broad daylight. He had seen the depths and hell that the dungeon had to offer. In these times was when he began to form his own ideals of what it means to be an adventurer in this place. One should break their own limits to proceed further in their adventures in the dungeon. Never had he agreed with Aina's methods and lessons about what adventurers should do or proceed within the dungeon, when having heard that Belle somehow made the sadistic elf silence and was promptly defeated, he had gained expectations of what type of adventurer Belle would be. When hearing he would be going on his first dive after waiting so long to be prepared, he expected to bring home a decent trophy drop from a monster within the first 8 floors. Brother, please, you should let me frame this over your bed. This would look amazing and intimidate guests that come in. Hogni's voice echoed the room as he held an rather large object in hand, sounding as though to pleaded Hayden to let him do whatever he was about to do. He. Can't wait to one-up that dumbass DEA Saints Familia with the stronger potion. Effects I'll make with this puppy. Hythe said as she cradled the small dragon horn in hand. I need a bath. Hulluin whimpered as she held onto several pieces of dragon scales in her hand, noticing the fact that they were covered in blood and her dress had a few blood splotches around as well. The Gulliver brothers trying to break Hulluin out of her trance as she wandered aimlessly around the room and bumping into object, but looking over across the room, seeing 2 of his familiar members running about with cries of annoyance and laughter. Admit it. You wish you got something this cool on your first dive, don't you, Alan? I won't admit to shit. I can kick a dragon's ass bare-handed. But as a level 1, I bet you would be crying. Whoa. I'm Alan. Stupid Alan. I let myself get punched in the face by a kid tilde even a weak goblin can kick my ass. Belle taunted as he narrowly avoided getting caught by Alan and laughed. I will shove those fangs down your throat, you fucking rabbit. Try and catch me then, pussy. Ignoring their bickering and running around, Otter decided to go to the only sane one of the bunch currently in the room, making his way through the crowd of the other members of their familia as they too came to see the party coming back from their dungeon dive. How deep did you all go? Otter asked Hayden as he pushed Hogni aside as he was carrying. Hayden's drop in hands. 11th floor. The idiot actually found a way to get to some of the floors faster. That would explain why you all returned earlier than expected for going that far down, even if it is meant for the weaker bunch. Still, a baby dragon on the 11th. Otter questioned as both he and Hayden looked at Bell, as the others cheered him on and taunted Alan even more. It was undiscovered for so long, he found it by accident before joining us. Same can be said about his shortcut route to the lower floors. I'll admit, it was quite the trip down and back up to the surface. Hayden said as Otter was surprised at the pleased smirk on his face. What was the advisor's reaction to when you returned with these drops? It wasn't these drops. Bell managed to cut off the head as a drop. Hayden said as Otter stepped back a bit from hearing it from Hayden's mouth. The whole head. Yeah, the look on that sadist face was a sight to behold. You should have seen it, Otter. Though with him around I'm pretty sure you'll get the chance one day. Hayden said as he turned to look at Alan now spinning Bell by his ankles and tossing him across the room. Thanks for the fun ride, idiot cat. Maybe spin me around faster and I'll get dizzy? Oh, Otter, is Pops telling you about our winnings from today's dive? Bell said as he staggered to get up and ran towards Hayden and Otter. Yeah, I'm quite impressed with what you've found for a beginner. More so, how lucky you are to have taken the whole head. That's something only specialized adventurers with certain skills are able to accomplish. Otter admitted as he saw Bell smirking and looked back at Alan with a smug look on his face. Say you're impressed. Not on my life, bunny boy. Alan, just stop hiding your insecurities at being one-up by Bell already. It's gonna get sad. Soon enough. Hythe taunted as the catboy flipped her off with both hands as she retorted. With the same. Oh, I just had an awesome idea. Hey Otter, how about you come with us on the next trip? It'll be fun, and with you and Pops, we could go even further beyond Dash. Absolutely not. You're still new and barely handling the 11th. No deeper than the 12th floor unless we get approval from our goddess and through legal issues with the guild. Hayden said as he crossed his arms in an X formation as he proceeded to smack Bell atop his head. Come on. I don't want to listen to that dumbass yap about safety and don't go on adventures. If we can't do that, then why are we even going in the dungeon? Bell said as he was squatting on the ground, nursing his head as he looked up at Hayden and Otter. Wait, I got it. Otter, how about you train me so I can get approval from Lady Freya and ignore Aina? Bell exclaimed as that brought those around them to stop and look at him as though he was crazy. Just so you know, my training puts the Gulliver brothers, Alan, Hogni, and Hayden through hell, and they still can't keep up. I wouldn't be holding back on you. Otter's voice was soft, but held so much weight many in the room felt pressure on them and an odd suffocating feeling, watching them as Bell seemed unaffected by their captain's word of warning. Soon they felt as though they saw black aura emitting from Otter as it shrouded over between the two. But Bell didn't even look intimidated in the slightest. Guess that means I'll be going to hell again then. Bell said as he clenched his open hand in the air, the sounds of his knuckles and fingers cracking, giving Otter a grin as he braced himself. Very well. Don't say I didn't warn Dash. Oh, come now, Otter. I think it would be interesting to see you train the new members and some that wouldn't mind the extra hand. Freya interrupted them as she entered the lobby, as all her children looked and bowed before their god. My lady, while I admit Bell is impressive, he still has a lot to learn and get better adjusted to Orario in the dungeon. Even if his skill allows him to grow far beyond the norm, we shouldn't let him become too exposed. Otter thought in his head as he looked at Freya, who understood what he was trying to say. True, I can't exactly deny that. Bell, though you are more adjusted to the dungeons, you still don't know about everything the city has to offer you, she said as Bell pouted a bit and looked away. I can see it in your eyes, young man. You can't lie to a god. Though honestly I don't even know if that is possible with you and how you tricked Loki. Freya said as she smiled at how cute Bell was when he looked upset, clapping her hands as it echoes the lobby. Her children then stood high in attention, smiling, as she looked at Otter, who knew what she would suggest and brought out one of his broadswords at the ready. While I think it would be beneficial for you all to grow one another and aid in training, Otter is rather busy often. However, Bell, if you can land even one hit or scratch on Otter, then I'll adjust his schedule and workload to accommodate him to be free to give you and any others Lessons. She spoke as Otter swung his sword with one hand, sending a gust of wind to blow across the lobby. Do you still want me to go all out? Or would you rather take my advice and dash? Yahweh! Bell cried as he charged at Otter with his knife in hand, jumping in the air as though to pounce on him. Yet that was but a futile effort at first glance, as using the flat part of his sword, Otter swatted him like a fly. Someone Alan get in my way. Bell cried as everyone backed away aside Alan, as he was kicked in the face unintentionally by Bell, as both of them collapsed on the floor with Bell, shaking his head and looking back to Otter with a smile. I don't know whether that was smart or idiotic to suddenly charge at me. Next time you should try to be silent about it, Otter said as he saw Bell running back to him again, and blocking or moving away from his strikes with ease. Hee. Like it'd matter if I was quiet, or if it mattered at all if I took it slow or take up your offer to fight until you agreed to train us. Bell said as he ducked under Otter's arm swing and rolled back from him, nearly bashing his head in with his sword. But if it means a chance that you'll train me and join my party, then it'll be worth it. I never agreed to dash. Otter's eyes widened as he backed his head away from Bell's dagger. Swing. Missing him, but he saw the strands of hair that he did manage to cut from his head. Swinging his sword like a bat, he sent Bell flying downward to the floor. The definite sounds of cracking as Bell rolled back from his swing indicated something was now broken. But Otter kept his guard up and leered at Bell with an observing gaze as he watched the boy slowly getting up on a shaken leg. If I didn't pay attention, he could have given me a scratch on my face. Is this his ability at work? He fought like a high-level 2 just now. He thought as he saw Bell pushing himself, with the strength his legs could muster, lunging at him as he was blocking with his sword, before smacking him hard with it. Another crack sounded, and again he got up and lunged, repeating this process over and over. In different ways and directions Bell flew, the other members ever silent, though a few voiced in their cheers for Bell, but from cheering to soon silence, to then begging Bell to stop and say it was all right to fail. And wait. It was though their begging and pleading felt deaf on his ears as Otter saw him once again stand, his breath ragged as his face cut and bruised, blood escaping his mouth as mixed with saliva. It dribbled down his chin, noticing that his left arm was hanging limply, indicating it was dislocated. It was clear he was beaten and defeated. He was a fool to not take him seriously, however, as he noticed his right hand clutching onto his knife and his red eyes staring at him with intensity as he bucked his knees down, legs still trembling but hardened to the floor to stabilize his stance. Otter noticed one thing. As he saw Bell now coming at him, he hadn't used his short sword or swapped it with his knife once. I'm impressed you lasted this long, even when I'm being serious. Sadly, I'm still holding back on you due to how you are now, Otter said as he put his sword back behind him and thrusted his arm out. A wheezing gasp and saliva and blood drooled out of Bell's mouth, many members moving out of the way as Otter punched him in the gut with enough force to rocket him farther back, many having to wince or cover their ears as Bell was determined to keep going. The soles of his boots planted against the floor, sending a harsh screeching noise across the lobby, and the smell of burning leather was in the air. A black trail leading up to now Bell's bare feet was etched onto the floor. He still stood tall, despite the wisp of steam coming from his bare feet, turning to a bright red color on his soles. Yet the hold on his knife was weakening, as each finger seemed to relax with each second until the clattering sound of metal falling on the floor was heard. Apologies my goddess. I think I went a bit overboard with that hit. I'll go and fetch the higher grade healing potions for him to recover faster, Otter said as he turned his back away from Bell and began walking up to his goddess. Does this mean you won't train him and any others, Otter? Not yet. I am impressed he could still stand after what I dealt to him, but it's clear he has a long way to go. If he decided to challenge me again, then I wouldn't mind, Otter said as Freya smiled at him before closing her eyes. You think it's really over? For now, yes, I believe Otter was about to say before his ears picked up an odd sound in the air, turning around as he narrowly avoided the incoming knife to his head, tilting to his right, as it flew past him. Fast. Was Hayden that ticked off about my fight with Bell? No, he isn't that idiotic. Perhaps. Since it would be tedious to heal him how he is what? Otter's eyes widened as he observed the spot where Bell was supposed to be and found no sight of him. Where did he dash? Where are you looking at? Otter turned to his right and stepped back a bit, not expecting Bell to have pounced high into the air at him. Due to his injuries, he at first thought it was impossible for Bell to even hold onto his dagger. But he didn't have a dagger, nor did he have a weapon in hand. He had the handle of his short sword on a tight grip, using his mouth to hold and use his weapon. "There is fife, isn't over." Bell grunted as he jerked his neck harshly to his left, bringing the blade to come down at Otter's face. In a moment of pure instinct, both of their bodies moved to match the other's movements. Otter backhanded Bell across the face, making his blade aim towards nothing. But doing so, Bell followed along with his remaining working arm, bringing it upward in an uppercut motion with the added force Otter gave him with the backhanded blow, nearing his chin for the hit, but instead flesh meeting flesh, the sound of a snapping bone and a thud was heard. Huff huff it's been far too long since I acted on instinct. I'll give you praise on that. But you're still new. So get some practice and experience in the dungeon and challenge me when you're ready. Otter said as he wiped his forehead and looked down at Bell, turning himself over on his back, a pained moan escaping his lips as well as a tired series of breaths as he looked up at the Boaz man, his frown turning to a small smirk as he tilted up his chin at Otter. "I just huff pant need to land one hit or scratch on you to train us right. Yeah, either a solid punch or a small scratch. Then what do I get if I actually cut you then?" Bell said with a raised eyebrow as that brought a confused look onto Otter before realizing his meaning. Bringing his hand up to his ears atop his head, he felt a trickle of something wet. Touching his left ear, he noticed that it was cut by the lower portion of it. Feeling the wound, he could tell that it was a permanent hit that couldn't be stitched. Taking his fingers off his ears and looking down at now the bloody fingers he had before his gaze was set back onto Bell. The look of shock was soon replaced with a small smile, his body trembling as many worried what would happen. For the longest time, the members knew that Otter had never been injured from a sparring match or by anyone weaker than a level 5 or any monster from the deepest floors. All backing away as they feared their captain would let loose his maddening fury on the boy. But instead Otter did something not all of them have ever heard or haven't heard in a long time. He laughed, Bell joining in the laughter as well, as both men now bellowing out howls of laughters. Even Freya was surprised at how hard Otter was laughing to the point he was clutching his stomach, and Bell was still laughing despite blood and saliva escaping his lips. Both of them too far into their moment they couldn't help but ignore Hephaestus ranting and yelling of them to stop and allow her to heal them. Yet, this pleased Freya very much, seeing at how Otter's soul shined just like when they first meet, and the air around the room turned from a tense dungeon to a blissful breeze in the fields. Flashback end. Since then, my children are starting to enjoy Otter's lessons, and we've even have sets of parties to help with finding medicinal items and bringing in more Valis to help stock up on potions and medicine to help them recover faster. Freya said as the sound of crackling fire and steam filled the room, noticing Hephaestus turning back to her with a bewildered expression as her single eye widened almost comedically out of her socket. "This, Bell Cranel, managed to cut your captain's ear when is only a level 1. Well, technically mid-level since I updated his status, but yes. Bullshit. How is he not drinking through a straw in a wheelchair?" Hephaestus said as she pointed her finger at the goddess of beauty. "My little Hythe is on par with the DEA saint. Plus, you know how the saying goes, children heal fast." Freya responded as though it was nothing at all, watching the red-head goddess biting on a rag with clenched teeth. "Freya, did you do anything to him that would make that even possible? Come now, you know the rules we have in this world. Do you think I would break them and risk going back to heaven?" Freya said with a blunt look as she sighed, knowing that this was confusing the poor red-head as she stood up and stretched out her body. "Honestly, I don't know how is it he's surprising me with his actions. Nothing notable appears when I update his status, though perhaps it's just his instincts he has," she said, giving the goddess some false truths as to hide Bell's potential and skills. "Instincts. You are aware of how some adventurers are stronger if they've fought monsters without a blessing first. Bell originally came from a far-off village. He did tell me he's fought off several monsters on his way to Orario," she said as Hephaestus took in her words before looking lost in thought. "I suppose that is possible. Still, this is something I just have a hard time to believe." Well, it's up to you if you believe it or not. I'm just telling you my stories I've seen and heard, about from my children, and there will be plenty more to tell you later. I'll be back soon. Wait, you're coming back here again. That took Hephaestus by surprise as Freya stopped herself from going out the door and looking back at her. Of course. I can't have you being all alone while your children are ignoring you. What kind of friend would I be to let you suffer that from your own children? Get out. Chapter end notes. Yo, surprised on another chapter so soon? Well, this is all part to the story, but these are more like mini chapters that give some time to explain some things and show off the relationships between some of the characters in the story. I will say that maybe you'll see some chapters like this pop up more frequently. They are part of the main story, so keep in mind. Still, this will be somewhat a surprise and treat for you all to read, so hope you enjoy and comment and spread word of this story. Really appreciate the love and support you all show for it. Chapter notes. Days with a Rabbit, the Gulliver Brothers. See the end of the chapter 4. Notes. Days with a Rabbit, the Gulliver Brothers. Why is it that the handles are the one thing that I struggle with? Hephaestus muttered to herself as she narrowed her one good eye at the heated slab of material before her anvil, gazing at it from different angles as she took her hammer and chisel and began to aim it. What's worse is the type of weapon it is. If it was just a regular length sword or bigger, then it would have been easier. Well, no point in complaining about this. Gently. SLAM. PHAE. I've come back to visit you, Freya said cheerfully as she slammed open the door to her workshop with such force the door left an indent on the wall, startling the redhead as she fell over and dropped her tools. At least knock before you come in. And already, it's barely been 2 days since last time. Don't you ever get hot in this place? Good thing I brought you something to drink while you work on my Belle's weapon, Freya said as she held a basket of different bottles and 2 cups in her other hand, one for her and Hephaestus. And you're just going to ignore me? Sniff is that Easter lemonade tea? Hephaestus blinked from the well-scented aroma coming from the bottle that Freya opened and began to pour in the 2 cups. Introduced me to this drink before and I find it quite refreshing. Like it? Come on and relax in your easy chair. Today you're just working on the handle guard, right? You can finish that quick, so why not take a break? Never mind. Hephaestus said as she took the cup filled with tea from Freya and moved her cushioned recliner closer to her own chair, both now sitting across one another, with a small stool between them acting as their table. So any progress in getting your familiar to stop looking down at the floors? Freya said, as she had her leg over the other and watched as Hephaestus actually looking somewhat pleased by her question. Let's just say some are now needing to go to a chiropractor and will be facing up for a while now. So that's progress, even if it was caused by their dumbass. Progress is progress, I suppose. Though it's a luon way before your children can even grow a brain to come up with a proper name for a weapon. Freya smirked as Hephaestus jerked a bit and pointed a finger at her. My children may be idiots, but they are not as bad as the other morons when we do the naming selection for Super Maximum Broad Destroyer. Freya said as Hephaestus froze, turning practically into a stone statue as she saw her shocked expression. The wand of unlimited power of execution. She continued, smiling as the now stone Hephaestus was cracking after each name she was listing. Neo Armstrong Cyclone Jet Armstrong Cannon, with a nice finishing touch. At this point, Freya was in near hysterics in her head as she watched her friend cracking and looking like she wanted to die because of her children. And currently, from what I remember, Hayden helping Belle find Pyankichi. She stated as. Now she watched the stone cracking out as Hephaestus was completely red in the face, squirming and covering herself with both hands, immediately shaking her head side to side. HNNGGGG. Why are my children such bigger idiots than the gods, especially that last one? How is he even worse than the gods' nicknames? Welfew Maroon. Hephaestus screamed atop her lungs to the ceiling as she collapsed back into her chair. I take it that you have your own wild child as well. This, Welf Crozo. It's nice to see you have at least one child you worry over for. Freya said as Hephaestus' eyes widened and looked at her in terror. Did your child get dash? Before you go about accusing me of whatever you're concocting in that head of yours. No, I'm not planning to take away your apparent boy toy. Freya said before she could even accuse her of anything. When Hayden and Belle went about with Huluan and Loki's Amazon, seeing his armor both of. Those boys said this and immediately bought it. It's light, well suited for him or me and good. And cheap, though the name kinda sucks. Well, at least his work is getting sales. But still, he has so much potential. I don't want to see him waste it away. Hephaestus moaned as she stirred her drink in hand, all while Freya took a drink from hers. He has the talent, doesn't he? To create magic weapons. Given how many years that family hasn't been able to create one that would be something worth to see. Freya admitted before, turning back to her friend with a dull look in her eyes. But you're an idiot to try and push him. Oh, and like you'd know how to deal with a stubborn idiot. Hephaestus bit back bitterly as, in response, she was given a smugged look by Freya. It was as if an arrow struck her again. Through the chest, and blood now trickled out of her lips. Us, damn it. You forget who's in my familia. He's a boy. They have their prides in this as well as their reasons. The only way you're going to see him break out of his shell is with another idiot. Fights him about it or gets through to him. That's how it was at first with the Gulliver brothers. When they joined me, they fought each other. Well, they are brothers, so that makes sense. But Welf isn't too close. To anyone aside Tsubaki maybe. Sure, he has some, but he's often a loner. Hephaestus said as, to humor Freya about her little suggestion to break her child's shell and do better. Well, I could always have Belle and him meet and travel together in the dungeon. Maybe Belle can be his friend, and it would help him make some new ones aside the ones inside my familia. That, or he can fight him out of his stupidity. Absolutely not. I heard what that rabbit did to Loki's captain. Hephaestus yelled as she crossed her arms in an X and looked at Freya with a worried look. Fighting is the cure for stupidity. And practically endanger the Crozzo line. Or worse, what kind of guy goes below the belt? 1. For Loki's captain, he was doing it for the Amazon girl's pride and honor. Honestly, what kind of man that does that to her won't take responsibility? And 2, it was that or I have Otter and Alan rip his manhood off. Fine, I'll look past that because Finn was being a bastard. But I don't want that to happen to Welf. Bell may act like a child, but he isn't an idiot. It's often odd seeing him being the smart one of the bunch at times, especially when it was the brothers that were acting like idiots. Freya muttered before bringing her cup to her lips for another drinks. Oh, don't you start acting smug and stopping there. You're already here and brought the drinks. So tell me. My, how bold. Aren't you going to offer me dinner before I open my mouth for your pleasure, Tilda? Silence your slutty tongue, you she-devil. Well, you can speak from experience. Fine, I'll hold my slutty tongue for you later. Right. Now let me recall when Belle was actually the smarter one of the bunch with the brothers. Freya said as she smiled at the red pouting look Hephaestus was giving. Flashback start. It was during the week where Belle was still being prepared before entering his first dive down. In the dungeon with a party. The very same which Borling even made that offer to Belle. Injure him, and he would join his party and take him down to deeper floors only once. Having served under Freya's familia for years, it wouldn't be a surprise if he had his moments of doubts and regrets. But making that bet with Belle was one of the biggest regrets he made. Deciding that fact. After the first day, he suggested that offer to him. Guys, you gotta help me. Borling shouted as he slammed the door shut behind him. Gasping for air with sweat running down his forehead as he looked at his brothers with the same face. As is looking at him with confusion or dull looks. Did you do something stupid with Hogni again? Or did you piss off Otter while he was busy? Alfred, the oldest of the four, asked with a raised eyebrow as he put down the book he was reading. Come on, Alf, he isn't that stupid like Alan. But you look like shit. What happened? Dvalin, the second oldest, asked as he was coming out from the bathroom and leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. Wait, was this because of that screaming from Belle earlier? Grer, the last and youngest of the brothers, said in realization Borling and Belle were connected somehow. Why yeah, I kinda bet him if he could land a scratch on me or catch me, I'd help him get down to the lower floors on the first day he gets back to the dungeon. Borling said as his brothers could only blink. That's why you're worn out. He's a level 1. He shouldn't be that hard to avoid. Alfred said, as his collar was then pulled, and he felt himself shook back and forth rapidly. You'd think that. But it was terrifying. He was persistent and hid in the strangest places. Borling said as he yelled at his older brother while the two other ones tried to pull them apart. Easy there, Berg. You don't want to get Alf mad, right? Yeah, 'cause the last time that happened was what ended us getting bounties and that Lunoir girl from the hostess to nearly hunt our asses down before she joined us. Grer and Valen said as Burling had let go of Alfrig. Believe me, after just now I'm kinda doubting I'll win this bet. Fucker had hidden in the tiny bathroom cabinets and came at me with a knife while I was in the store. Burling said as Grer and Valen looked at him in horror and Alfrig blinked and looked disgusted. That's nightmare-inducing now. Thanks a lot, Berg. I'm gonna board up our bathroom cabinets before we hit the hay. Disgusting. He came in you on the stool. Better question, who goes into a stall and doesn't? Lock the damn door. Alfrig said as he leered at Burling, watching now the three of them, looking terrified. You guys gotta help me avoid that kid when you see him. Otherwise, who knows what kind of creepy crap he could pull next. Wait a sec, why should we help you? Dvalin asked as he pointed a finger at him, with Grer nodding with him and Alfrig shaking his head and looking irritated. Think of it this way. He sees any of you without your helmets or different clothes then. Whatever I wear, he's gonna target you instead. Burling said with a calm expression as he had his hands together and pointed them at his brothers. A few seconds passed by for them, before the other three brothers' skin soon turned paler and paler. Grer was already chattering his teeth and looked absolutely horrified. Dvalin soon picked his helmet from his bed and strapped it on, grabbing his hammer in the process close to his chest. Alfrig slowly walked towards Burling and soon punched him atop his head, seeing him now, wincing and squatting on the floor as he looked up to the oldest of them. Fine. We'll help get him off you for a while. But if this ends up blowing up in our faces then, you're on bathroom duty for the next month. Thank you. Burling said as now the brothers began their planning an idea into play, being which they would wear Burling's set of armor and clothes for the rest of the week until this game of bells ended. Day 1, of which was put into testing, as Grer walked about in Burling's armor in Folkvanger, looking about where Bell could be coming from, staying cautious and walked slowly as to prepare to run away and see if this could fool the boy. Right, let's see what Berg was saying about him popping in weird place dash. Hurrah! Immediately panicking at the sudden war cry, Grer tightened into a redder stance and looked around him, until he looked down at the floor and noticed that a shadow was overcasting his. Looking up and quickly moving to his left, he avoided Bell suddenly diving on top of him. Damn, so close to body slamming you. Bell said as he landed in a squatted position and rolled to the side. How the hell did you do that? I climbed onto the ceiling and waited for you to come by. Kinda hard since I was losing grips on my knives every couple minutes. Bell said as he stood up and stretched a bit before taking his knife from the floor and looked at Grer. But the ceiling is like 20 feet above us. How in goddess's name did you even dash? Sue, where's your brother Burling? What did you guys mix up your clothes? Bell said, before Grer could even question him, making the youngest Paolum brother blink beneath his helmet and looked at Bell for a moment. Did that fall give you brain damage? You're the one that's targeting me till the end of this. Week 4 dash. Nah, you're not Burling. Well, the armor is but you're Grer right. Bell said, now believing that he wasn't his target and confident it was who he said it was. How could you even tell? And, yeah, the armor thing is what I could grab since my ass of a brother is washing anything dirty of ours at the moment. Grer said as to give off an excuse. Why he was wearing Burling's armor. Come on, it's not that hard. I mean, you guys are quadruplets, right? You might all look the same, but you guys are completely different. It's pretty easy for me to tell the difference. Bell said as he sheathed his knife away as Grer took off his helmet and looked at Bell with widened eyes. How? We have the same face, voice, height, almost everything is the same with us. Grer exclaimed as he saw Bell smirking and pointed at his own set of eyes. Well, for one, your eye colors are way off. You got red eyes like mine. I know Burling's is green. The other two I assume are different as well. Bell said as Grer palmed his own face, forgetting to have put contacts on to make it at least convincing. Also, from what I remembered when first meeting you guys, you were the shortest one of them and act a bit cranky at times. Bell said as he put his hands behind his head and watched, as the youngest Paolum brother clenched his teeth and scowled at him. Huh. I'm not the short one. That's DVAL. See, you're acting cranky tilde plus I noticed it by seeing your guys' helmets. Yours was just a little bit short in height compared to the others. Well, didn't you think maybe I was slouching that dash? Meh, Well, sorry about scaring you then. I'm gonna go hunt your brother still. Hopefully you won't have to share clothes with him for a while. I'll ask if your guy's laundry is done while I hunt. Bell said as he ran off elsewhere, leaving Greer to look absolutely bewildered and ruffle his own hair in confusion. The third day was just as odd for the brothers. After hearing how Bell could easily detect them differently made things much more difficult for them, now needing to have their eyes covered with a black veil inside their helmets so they could see, but no one would see their eyes from the outside. Adjusting his helmet, Dvalin wandered the halls in the evening, the setting sun shining from the outside peered through the great manor's windows, basking the inside in a warm orange glow, with shadows covering many of the halls and items in darkness. I swear to Hades if Alan ate my snacks again, I am going to make him eat a brick of obsidian. This would be the third, gods, damn, time he's pulled this shit on others. He muttered as he oh so wanted to savor his own snacks after having to deal with his brothers' idiocy in this bet. He halted as he detected something lurking behind him. Grabbing his brother's spare axe he carried on his back, and now on guard he turned, to only see the shadows and the rest of the hallway behind him. Behind his helmet, his eyes leered, peering in the shadows casted by the sun to see if anything was amiss. Falling his stance, but still holding the large axe in hand, never taking his gaze off from the hallway before him. Okay, I know I sensed something off, and nothing can hide in those shadows or behind any of the furniture. What the hell's going on? Dvalin muttered as he turned his back and continued walking to where he was headed towards the dining hall. Once inside, its large abundance full of the finer dining tables and chairs, chandeliers hanging from its lavish ceilings, the furniture practically shining, and the kitchen having an open view to all that would eat inside this lavish and relaxing hall. Noticing the curtains to the hall was closed, he initially thought this to be a mistake, until he did recall that the staff had done a bit of cleaning lately and thought them covering the windows was to prevent dull color to come to their furniture and leave any watermarks on their glasswares. Walking past the tables in the dark, he made his way back into the kitchen, turning towards the back end of the kitchen and kneeled down to the floor, opening a floor tile as inside was a small crate. Taking it out as he opened the crate, pulling out his hidden stash of snacks and wrapped pastries and sweets. His mouth watered as he couldn't help but lick his lips and slurp the drool in his mouth that was forming. Ah, my sweet cinnamon rolls, how I need you so. Note to self, steal money from Borling to make up for doing this bullshit. Dvalin said as he closed back the crate with his sweets and snacks inside, placing the tile back before standing up. A clattering of a ladle was heard, as now Dvalin became tense, raising his axe as he clutched the crate underneath his arm, glaring beneath his mask as he looked around the kitchen for anything. Alan, is that you? You fuck, if you're here for my snacks I will kick your balls worse than the kid did on baptism. He roared in a protective rage for his sweets as the sounds of other utensils falling echoed the kitchen. I am going to kick your ass, Alan. Not before I take this. A voice called in the dark, as Dvalin's eyes widened in horror, clutching his fingers, feeling nothing on them, waving his arm about, no weight on him, his teeth grinding against one another as an eerie growl escaped his lips. Who? No. Where the fuck are you? It's not where I am, but rather, who I am. The voice called behind him, as Dvalin slashed the axe behind him, only knocking down more kitchen utensils and pots, completely missing flesh he meant to cut down. I am the shadows of the world. Slash. I am the assailant of the world's evil. Clatter. I am the terror that quacks in the night. Quack. Slash. Wait a minute, was that a live duck? I am vengeance. Shatter. I am the night. Just shut the hell up and ga. After slashing once again, Dvalin did indeed felt something was cut. Something soft as it landed on the floor in a splatter. Leering his eyes to see in the dark, what he saw made his knees collapsed. No. No, no, no. Not this. Anything but this. He said as he grabbed the thing he did cut apart, feeling hot liquid falling from his hands and the crumbling soft mounds that of flesh. The stench of what he cut caused him to hyperventilate. What are you to cause me to do this? He roared as a small match was lit before him. From the glow of the fire, he could only see a pair of deep red eyes staring into his helmet's eye slits. I'm Batman. Who dash. Hi. Dvalin was then tackled and fought against his attacker. rolling out of the kitchen as he felt him slamming his attacker against the furniture, rolling and tumbling around the dining hall until the sound of cloth ripping caused both to stop. The sun-setting light glowing and illuminating the room, as now Dvalin was on top and choking his attacker, to be surprised that it was Bel, covered in melted cinnamon glaze and crumbs of pastry around his neck. I will gouge out your dash. Dammit Argarak. Again. DGCK, you guys just crap with laundry skills. Bel chocked out, as he pushed Dvalin off with his foot and gasped for air, coughing and hacking as he tried to breathe. Wait a second, how? You can't see my eyes. I'm wearing his clothes and armor. How the fuck did you tell the difference? Dvalin said as he forgoes his anger towards Bel and now was more irritated. He was found out instantly. Gasp HR, MGHMMKK. T those snacks, AR&T Borlings. He prefers sour snacks like those fried potato slices laced with lime powder. And that's not his hiding spot for snacks. Bel explained as now Dvalin definitely wanted to strangle his brothers at this point. Oh gods damn it, I'm gonna kick Berg's ass and I'm gonna kick your ass for ruining my snacks. Dvalin yelled as he pointed his axe at Bel, who raised his arm. Hey, okay, that was on you and Mir. You were swinging around like an idiot in the dark. Besides, 5-second rule. Like I can eat crumbs now. You were the one choking me with the cut rolls. Before both of them could argue, they heard the sounds of coming footsteps to the hall. Both eyes widened as the sound came closer and closer, turning to one another in fear as they noticed the mess they made. If you get us out of this, we're even. I get around in the crawl spaces. That should fit both of us and get out of here quickly. Go. Go 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 go. Wait, what the fuck are we gonna do about this mess? Dvalin asked as Bel turned back to him before bringing out a marker and flicking the cap off with his thumb and pulled out a sheet of paper. As the two hurried into the crawl space Bel used to avoid Dvalin's slashes, they crawled and remained silent, not before pausing at the sudden cry of anguish coming from Hythe and Haluan, and then the sound of Alan's name being called for bloody murder did the two share a snickering laugh. Day 5 and 6 were the oddest days for the eldest of the brothers, Alfrig. The past week Bel had hunted and identified his other brothers with ease and was close to catching Borling a few times. But whenever he saw him, Bel wouldn't acknowledge him or just stared for a moment before looking for Borling again. This was somewhat good for him, and yet there was a sinking feeling in his gut that something was off. Nearly an entire week gone by before the deadline would end. But the Rabbit Boy didn't even try to attack him. Maybe his brothers were enough of a distraction. Talking this to account, he found himself sitting out in the steps of the outside garden, looking over at the wide grassy fields and flower beds and other decorative plants there. Familia had, relaxing as he slumped down his shoulders and let out a breath of air. I need a vacation. I need to get to the dungeon soon. Alfred nearly jumped out of his place on the steps as he saw Bel sitting next to him with a drink in hand, looking out at the garden, bewildered the fact he didn't even hear him coming, close or sitting down. Is this what Berg mentioned? Him pulling off some creepy crap? Alfred thought as he looked at the kid and saw him turning his head his way. Oh hey Gre, taking a break. Don't worry, I know it's you under there, so I'm not gonna do anything. For now. Bel said as. For now, he says. Alfred muttered as Bel looked at him once again and let out a TSK. Again, you guys are stuck sharing clothes. Is your older brother that much of an idiot to mess up laundry? Which one, Alfred? Right. Bel said as that made him stiff and bit his lip under his helmet. Yeah, that's the oldest of us. But it's Burling that was supposed to do the laundry. What did he get pushed into doing it because Alfred messed up again? Bel said as Alfred was beginning to get irritated, but held himself back as to not reveal himself. You know, mind answering me a few things I got to know about your brother? I've only ever heard about him from Hogni and what Alan talk about, so there's not much I know about the guy and haven't met him in person one-on-one. Well, what do you want to know about him? Alfred said as he was now curious of what Bel was interested in. Well, I wanted to know if a rumor was true about him. According to Hogni, he has this one habit where if someone stands behind him, he can take a piss. Bel said bluntly as he thought. He heard something shattering around. Well, I think it's because we've been through some harsh times in the past, and had to be on guard a lot. So him freezing up is just probably instinct on his part. Alfred said, trying to defend himself, not wanting the truth out that he can't pee if someone is behind him. Alan also said that he freezes up because his dick is smaller than his little brother's. Bell said as Alfred was gritting his teeth and snarling. Fucking Alan. You ass, I will tie you up and leave your pathetic limp dick body in the pleasure district doused in aphrodisiac and let that bitch Freya's women rape you. Sideways. Alfred thought as his fist was shaking. Dunno why that idiot was trying to tell me about his dick and how small it was. I think ether. Alan is trying to compensate for his own tiny dick, lying out of his ass or, nope. Nothing. Never mind. Bell said with a horror-stricken face as he turned away looking a bit nauseous. What? What about Alan? Nope, can't say. Frankly it's too disturbing to even think that. Tell me what it is. What is that fucking cat implying to you about Alfred? He said as he pulled Bell's collar and brought his face to meet his helmet. I think that Alan might be gay for your brother and wants his dick. Bell said with a straight face as now it was as though the color drained from Alfred's body. Letting go of Bell. As the boy stumbled back and looked at Alfred with a blank stare. Before finally the dam was broken. What the fuck is that fucking dumbass even suggesting? Me gay? His gay? Gay for me? This better be a goddamn joke on his fucking part. No way in hell am I letting him take my dick. He bellowed out in rage and in embarrassment at the idiot cat as he was snarling and shaking his fist. Soon realizing his blunder, he turned to see Bell looking at him, with a goddamn smirk on his face as he tried to cover it up with his hand. I can't believe you bought that. Hogney was right. You are an idiot. I'm giving you 5 seconds to run. Fine. But first, inhale Hogney. I broke him. He admitted he wants Alan's cat dick. You owe me 5,000 veils. I didn't agree to it. I'm gonna kill you and that damn elf's ass. Fucking Alan. I blame your ass. All men be aware. Alfred's on the hunt for asses. Cover yours. Before he tries to put his dick in them. I'm not gay, goddammit. But you didn't deny the assumption earlier. Bell yelled out as laughter and destruction sounded about around the manor. The members looking at the running rabbit and the berserker of the brothers. Many of them laughed and jeered at the innocent joke and many were in on it. As the girls yelled at Alfred to leave their cute rabbit member alone, saying that he was too young for him. Others claiming that it's Alfred that should be the bottom or had passed out from nosebleeds at the word of Alfred coming out of the closet. Flashback end. He tricked Alf of the Gulliver brothers to reveal himself, and was able to know it was a different brother each time they tried to distract or take his attention away from Borling. Hephaestus said astonished as Freya laughed at the telling of her story. Yes, Tilda, I was very amused when Alfred was trying to persuade the others he was straight, even though they knew he was. But it was quite the sight to see him returning from the pleasure district with only his boxers on and covered in lipstick marks. Just what is he? Already making impressions in your familia. He's such a wild child, that one. Freya. Hephaestus said as she slumped back in her chair as she finished polishing off the metal for the handle of the weapon. However, she failed to notice the worried look on Freya's face when she mentioned wild child. Well, I feel that with Bell it's best for him to go about it on his own. Set his own pace and methods of growing. And it's not like his alone, what with his father joining by his side and my cute Hulluan joining in. She chimed as Hephaestus set the handle piece aside and looked at her. By the way, is it honestly true that Hayden is his father? She asked with much interest. As Freya smirked and looked at her face, practically dying to know the truth. That's for Hayden to know and the rest of you to find out on your own, Tilda, she said as she stood up from her seat and left the office once again, leaving Hephaestus until next time she would visit again with hopefully another interesting story to tell about her Bell. Chapter end notes. We get to around 6,900 hits and more comments, and then I'll post the next chapter. ASAP. Days with a Rabbit, Elven Divorce. Days with a Rabbit, Elven Divorce. I'm surprised you came later than usual. Lately you seem to come by every day or other day. Why this time? It's been 3 days and Monsterphilia is in 4 days. Hephaestus said as she was currently seated by the kill. In front of her was a grindstone while she was making rotate with a pump she built to keep it spinning, pumping it with her foot as she inspected the weapon she was still making for Freya as the other goddess settled in her seat. Well, you weren't at the meeting a few days ago, but you are aware Monsterphilia was Pushed back. Hermes screwed up a few things, and those of us with actual use and money needed to put in aid to help Ganesha with the sudden change in plans. Freya said as she sank back into the comfortable armchair she was in. That idiot. When will he realize he has to stop messing around? I feel sorry for his children. Hephaestus said as she was putting on her goggles and slowly started to bring the weapon to the grindstone, slowly moving it along the wheel as small sparks started to fly. So the reason why I was late was because I needed to fill out paperwork and set my children out on certain jobs to help Ganesha, which went rather well and paid off quite a bit. Freya said as Hephaestus turned her head towards her before going back to her grinding the weapon. For your familia or for the story you're gonna tell me, I'll listen, but I'll be a bit focused on this. So sorry if I don't respond or yell at whatever insanity your child pulls off, she said as she returned back to the weapon and slowly gliding it up and down. Well, we did make quite the profit. But yes, Bel now seems to have created quite the rumor that now people are gossiping and believe it to be true. Freya said as she waited a bit and saw that Hephaestus was now focused heavily on sharpening the blade. He solidified that Hades and Reveria were married. However, they are now divorced because of a dispute over him. She started off as that was when Hephaestus nearly fell over the grinding stone, nearly hitting it, and would have eventually scraped part of her face if she hadn't landed a bit to the right of it. Reveria tried claiming that he couldn't be her child as he didn't have the proper traits of an elf, much less elven royalty. Hence to why Hades despises Reveria for refusing to believe he is their child and wanted nothing to do with him at birth. Is your child fucking mental? How? Just how did he create a rumor that big? And how are idiots falling for it and gossiping it around like a whore in the red light district? Hephaestus said as she pointed the weapon at Freya on instincts and had her hands up in the air at the sheer audacious news she was told. Loki is absolutely going to kill you for starting this. Would you believe me that Bel was only about half the reason this rumor came to be? But, rather, he had a bit of help from Loki's own children. Freya said as she opened one eye and smiled at Hephaestus as she was frozen with a shocked look on her face. How and when the fuck was this? And who in the right mind from Loki's Familia would believe such a thousand elf Lephia, along with her little friend from Dionysius Filvis Chalia? They were there when it happened and helped spread this rumor after seeing what Bel did to the shop owner. This is gonna take me all day, but fuck it. Fuck it. I have to hear this now. Your weapons. Gonna take longer since I'm now gonna have to sharpen it slowly to be able to hear this story. Now, I hope you're happy. Not as happy as you are. If I didn't know any better, I think you've been looking forward to hearing my stories about Bel now. Freya smirked as she saw the smithing god now taking her time and pacing the sharpening of the blade very slowly as she leaned forward in the arm chair. Flashback start. Due to the blunder that god Hermes had made around the Colosseum, Monsterphilia had to be forced to be delayed for a few days. Originally, it was meant to be pushed back for an entire month. But with the request from Ganesha and the guild, many familiars offered to help ensure the festival was to be held as soon as possible. This included Freya's Familia as well in the help of Ganesha request. Some of the members went into the dungeons with Ganesha's children, as they needed help capturing some other monsters for the event. Others went to the guild as part of the labor force, in preparations and help with constructions to stalls and eateries, along with to ensure the safety in the stalls and gates, for the monsters to be extra secure, leaving Bel in the hands with the other part of Ganesha's needed help, being part of magical and medical gathering items team. They were tasked to purchase medical items and drugs to help with the dungeon capture team to ensnare and trap monsters, along with Ether assisting in preparing said drugs and medicine for the adventurers in the dungeon and to have on hand in case injuries were to happen during the event. Hythe and Huluan were tasked with him, however parted ways as both of them were called to help in preparing medicines. Hence, Bel was now paired with Hades and Hogni in searching for medicinal items along with magical remedies to help in the process of creating more potent sleeping traps, among the other varieties to capture monsters with ease and minimal injuries. He was being led by the both of them down the streets and back allies of Orario, going through its dark twists and turns, even underground as they had made their way to one specific shop, enshrouded by magic illusions as Bel was amazed at the variety of items and magical tools inside the witch's secret house. Whoa, This is amazing. All these scrolls and staffs. And magical weapons and clothes too. Pops, is this where you get your stuff from? How come you never took me here when we went clothes shopping? Bell said as he was zooming across the small shop in amazement as sparkles were emitting from his eyes. Why would I bring you here when you haven't developed an aptitude for magic at all yet? Idiot. Hayden said as he shook his head as Hogni was showing Bell a few items. Come now, Hayden. Just because he can't use magic yet doesn't mean you can hold out on showing him at least something. Besides, wouldn't you want your son to follow your footsteps? Yeah, Pops. I want to do something awesome like you and Hogni do with magic. Plus, your clothes are awesome. Bell chimed in as now both he and Hogni were attempting to appease Hayden with praises and compliments. Never would I believe that the White Knight of Freya would have a child. But the evidence is as plain as day by the looks of him. A voice called from behind the counter. Looking at the back entryway to see the curtains hanging there moved and saw a small woman climbing up to be seen over the counter. She was dressed in a long dark robe, her eyes and part of her face covered by her gray hair, and black pointed hat. She had a long nose, with warts and blemishes adorning it as she moved over a few items with a wand in her old, withered hands with long sharp nails. Lady Lenoa, apologies for bringing him here. But we dash. I know why you're here, child. Faye, is that moron of a god. Now I have to wait longer. For Demeter Familia's pumpkin pies. So, what exactly do you need for helping with the festival? She said as she grumbled about waiting for her precious sweets. Well, we need the following: a dragon's flame sack, 3 bundles of abyss mushrooms, lizardman's saliva, dew drops from a yew sprout and burdock from back home. Hayden said as he listed off what he had written for supplies Huluan and Hythe needed, and an enchanted cape, something to make Pops here look badass. Bell said as he grinned at the old witch, before being caught in a choke hold by Hayden as Hogni smiled and covered his mouth to hide his chuckles. Will you stop with your idiot habits? We're just here for the supplies. Come on, I'm just trying to look out for you, Pops. Adding a cape would get Lady's attention. For you. Bell choked out as Hogni pulled them apart as Bell smiled and turned to the witch. Hey, Miss Lenora, you have any cool robes to make my Pops a hit with the ladies? I know I kinda worry him a lot and is often the only smart one in the familia, so I figured I'd help him connect well with a nice smart woman. Have you been trying to set me up on dates? Hayden yelled as he looked at Bell in shock and bewilderment. I worry about you, Pops. You always say that you need someone in your life to talk to without a headache. Is that why I've been getting love letters from office women and some of the staff from the guild? What the hell is wrong with you? I'm trying to help you look for love again, Pops. Why are you so scared to get back into love? Try it and marry a nice woman. One that I can call MOM someday. Admit that you're stupid. Over my dead body. Bell roared as he tackled Hayden down on the floor and rolled around the small shop, yelling and arguing with Hayden as he was trying to refuse Bell's ideas. A slur of yells and grunts from the two of them as both argued about Hayden's love life and Bell's idiocy. Hee. HHE's definitely your son, you stupid brat. Lenoa cackled as both Bell and Hayden paused their fighting, with Hayden pulling on Bell's hair and Bell looking about to bite Hayden's leg and pausing before he could take the first nick with his teeth. How it's been ages since I last laughed like that. Be grateful to your caring son, you idiot white elf. Since I'm in such a good mood, I'll sell you the items for half the price each. And I'll see if I have something in the back for this little one's request. Lenoa. Oh, please let it be a cape. Bitches love capes. Hogni said to the woman as she cackled, walking to the back of her shop as Hogni picked up both Hayden and Bell, smiling at him as he fist pumped in cheers to helping out Hayden. Enough. Stop corrupting him. Hayden said as he looked at them and clutched his hands in place. Hearing the door being open and ringing the bell, the three of them looked at the incoming customers, one of them making Hayden's stress level spike. Perhaps you should take your own words to heart, you useless king. And maybe you should learn to shut that whorish mouth of your wench. My lady, please don't pick a fight in Lady Lenoa's home. Easy, Pops. Easy now. Breath in through the nostrils, then out through the mouth. Lefia and Bell said to their respective teachers are familiar members, blinking and both looking at each other across the room. Oh, Miss Lefia, you here to assist with the festival? And, I'm sorry but I don't recall meeting your friend behind you. Is she part of your familia? Belle said as he and Hogni were trying to help Hayden relax. Lefia looked over to her left as she dragged Reveria back a few steps, moving aside as for Belle to get a better look at who else joined her and Reveria to the witch's house. Belle's eyes gazing to the right and meet his red eyes with the girl ahead of him to her own pair of red eyes. Yet, they were more alluring than his own, having somewhat of a more amber-like color in her red irises. She was an elf as the ears gave it away, but one with dark hair color, as it was black and shined like obsidian, standing out with the outfit she was wearing, primarily with white and light blue colors of her jacket, hugging her body well, and her skirt was somewhat short, stopping at her mid-thighs, though also showing off her long legs, with a view given how her white tights hugged her thighs and mashing well into her white and blue boots. He noticed that aside her eyes and hair, her hands were another part of her that stood out. Being an elf, it wasn't uncommon for some to wear gloves on their hands to prevent touching others. Oh, sorry but no. She's not part of our familia, Mr. Cranel. This is my friend Filvis. Chalia. They please keep in mind about Dash. Before she could even warn him, Belle was immediately in front of Filvis and grabbed her hand, shaking it up and down like a kid would, and smiled, while Filvis was baffled and could only make a face with her lips puckered into an X. Nice to meet you. Any friend of Lefia and Tiona is a friend of mine. I'm Belle Cranel, a new adventurer. Hope we can go dungeon diving together someday. Oh, you should try and join us, Miss Lefia. It could be fun. Belle, not all elves are comfortable with touching others. Snapping his attention from the argument with the elf princess, Hayden turned to scowl at Belle, who was still holding Filvis's hand, seeing the boy looking lost and the other's face now flushed red. But I'm wearing gloves, Pops, so it should be fine, right? I'm not an idiot, Belle said as he muttered that last part and looked back to Lefia and Filvis. Even so, Mr. Cranel. Filvis doesn't like to be touched. Sorry. She dash. I don't deserve to be touched. Filvis interrupted as Belle looked back to her, his own crimson eyes looking into her down-ridden red orbs as she pulled away her hand and looked down. I tend to make things unclean when I touch something or someone, even my own kind. I'm unclean. So, sorry if it may seem that I'm being rude, but it's for your own sake. You seem like a good person, Mr. Cranel, which is all the more reason why you shouldn't dash. Before she could finish, she was startled as she felt the sleeve of her coat being grabbed and pulled towards Belle, having a look of pure focus peering into her eyes as she watched him open his mouth and bit on the fingertips of his own glove. No, please. I'll just make things worse for you, Filvis said in a panic, as he watched him toss the glove aside with his mouth, now his hand bare naked and opened, watching in horror as he motioned it over to her own gloved hand and slowly peeling it off. Lefia. Mr. Cranel. Please desist. Are you trying to prove a point? What you're doing is. It's that's absolutely lewd. She won't be able to marry. Lefia exclaimed as. Now Reveria and Hayden looked at each other for a moment, before glaring at Belle and at each other. Belle, don't be Allen-level stupid. Stop that right now, young man, or I'll tell Lady Freya and MIA to ban your ass from ordering extras. You abhorred dumbass of a fallen king. What kind of fucking standards are you even teaching him? Cease this, boy, or you will learn the consequences of Elven L-. Does it look like I give a crap about what you say you'll do? Belle said in a cold voice, causing the three elves to pause and look at him. Filvis felt a shiver crawl up her spine, but by instinct, relaxed her hand as Belle continued to slip her glove off. Hogni and now Leona looked at the scene with piqued interest. If you're gonna talk bad about Pops, then you have no excuse about how you teach that dumb blonde about etiquette and manners. Plus, we're not in your kingdom, are we? He said, as he looked at Reveria with a cold gaze, that it felt like he could burn her and freeze her soul, and send it to hell. We're in Orario, a place where we're free to adventure, a city where opportunities and friendships are found and forged through trial and peril. I can't stand by and see a friend in trouble, Belle said as he finally took off the white glove of Filvis' hand, holding his own hand very close to hers, noticing she wasn't flinching away from him. He stopped himself from touching her pale, delicate hand, as they were only mere millimeters away from one another. You say that you're afraid to touch people because you think you'll make them unclean and dirty them, he asked her, as she nodded, her eyes wavering as they looked at his hand in fear for what she believed will happen to him if they even so much as graze one another. Then I'll bet that nothing will happen to me, Bell said as he showed his teeth with a confident grin on his face, turning back to Reveria as she flinched at the wild and bizarre look he showed her. Hey, Granny Queen, wanna bet on this? If I don't become dirty or impure or whatever, you drop those lame threats of yours and owe me 3 favors, he said as Lefia and Filvis's jaws dropped at how blunt and disrespectful he was being to their queen. And if you do succumb to any curses or become tainted, I fail to see what I would gain dash. You'd have my life and Pops will bow before you and apologize about anything, he said as both she and Hayden froze at his vow, double taking it in, as they did in fact hear that he was putting his life on the line. Kill me, behead me, put me on trial, make me a martyr to your people back home, blacklist me from Orario, anything, everything you can think of to make my life hell. Is this so called punishment for your people's sacred bullshit laws about other races and touching? Bell said as Reveria's eyes were shaking and dilating back from normal to shrunken in fear. What even is he? Is he that foolish to offer his own life over something Filvis has been hiding to protect others? He barely knows her and he wants to risk it all to get her to be more social and to stop hiding herself. She thought in pure confusion and fear, swearing she could see something demonic forming behind him. Please, don't dash. Don't worry. Believe me, you're not gonna hurt me. I dunno who told you that you make things unpure or whatever. What I do know is that you're a good person, Bell said to her as he then made contact with her hands, their palms and fingers touching one another. His hand, it's so warm. L like a fire over a cold winter night, she thought as her hands twitched at the warm feeling of Bell's hand, almost wanting to intertwine with his fingers to never let go of this warmth she felt. However, she felt it seeping from her hand. Looking at the black miasma she could only see forming, it shrouded her entire hand, but what terrified her was that it was growing larger and larger. No, please Mr. Bell, stop. Pull away from me. By now this should be enough to win your bet, she thought as now the dark miasma was forming into a horrifying figure, looking as though it was a decaying shroud. She could only hear it screeching in hunger as she saw it now headed towards Bell. Her eyes shook as she was panting softly, worried for Bell as she closed her eyes tightly, apologizing over and over in her head, a repetitive mantra as she let another one be tainted and unclean. Don't worry, I said nothing bad would happen. You're a good person. Besides dash, Bell said as now he intertwined his fingers into hers. Her eyes snapped open at the sudden tightness she felt on her cold hand and looked at Bell, his red eyes burning with determination as the miasma was decaying away at his gaze, looking at the dark shroud burning as though it was paper, its cry of agony as it tried to get away, only to be burnt to nothingness. I'm a man that will never die before I can reach my dream, Bell exclaimed as the miasma burned away from her own hand. Her heart beat rapidly as she felt this sudden warmth. He then released her hand and still felt his warm touch. All right, Granny, test me out. Let's see if you're gonna hang me by the throat or you'll be in my debt for the rest of your life. It was only 3 favors that you dash. Being in debt to him practically signs your life away, wench. You're a fool to have take it, Hayden said with a sneer and smirk on his face, causing Reveria to growl back at him. Faye, there's no need, boy. You're a bright and pure one. Besides, knowing this uptight brat, she would have lied to you and owned you out of pity, Lenoa said as Bell looked back at the witch and smiled, laughing and danced in his victory with Hogni. Lady Lenoa, I how dash. Please you brat, I know how you are. Who do you think taught you about making deals and having the upper hand? Stupid idiot child. Leona smirked as she cackled at the doomed Elven queen, which Hayden was taking into seeing the tormented look on her face. Added the fact with his smug look, Hogni and Bell added on a small cape over his shoulders that somehow blew in the store with no wind. See, brother, I told you this would look amazing on you. Bitches love capes, Hogni said as Hayden looked down at his shoulders and saw the small red cape hanging off his shoulders, pausing himself before he looked back at Bell and Hogni. Normally, I'd kick your ass, but I'm in a good mood. I mean a really good mood. So I'll let this pass. Thank you, Lady Leona. Best of luck to you young elves. Wench, prepare to be my students, bitch, Hayden said with a smirk as Bell grinned. Speaking of which, For the next week, you have to agree on anything said about you. That's gonna be one of my favors. Bell said as he smirked wider as Reveria gave a disgusted look, and spat aside, causing Lefia and Filvis to sigh and worry for their queen. Oh, which granny? Wanna get in on this too? You can help make her agree to whatever. Anyone says Tilda, he said with an innocent glee as that caused the witch's eyes to sparkle in a mischievous manner. Interesting, what did you have in mind? She asked as Bell walked over to her and crouched down to where he cupped his hands over to the witch's ear. All was silent aside the faint hisses and pitter-patter coming out of Bell's lips that were barely audible. Nothing happened until he was done and stood straight back up. The witch looked at Bell, then to Hayden and Reveria. All aside, Bell shivered as her cackling laugh shook the bottles and doors in her very shop, her hands clutching her sides as she kicked her legs as she fell over. Oh, but you could have made such a cool sword. No, wait, a giant bow and arrows for it that looked like it came straight off a monster's corpse. Oh yeah, scare the shit out of monsters with the bones of their very own and kill them with it. No wait, a big cannon you could fire over and over without loading it one at a time. A repeating big cannon that causes giant explosions. The boy cried as Tsubaki's eyes widened. Before smothering the boy in her large ample breast, she was squealing and swinging him around in a circle before she looked at her goddess and held out the boy in her arms from under his armpits. Lady Hephaestus, please can we keep him? He understands me. He's perfect for our familia. He's my type. *CRASH*. Are you an idiot? Do you want me to cause a war to happen if you took in Freya's kid? Without his consent. And even if he did, I don't want Freya marching in her with an army. Hephaestus yelled as her familiar's captain was squatted on the floor nursing now the large bump on her head that was smoking, as Hephaestus's hand was smoking as well. I'll be discussing about Freya's project with, terribly sorry about Tsubaki, Bell Cranel. Right. Please, don't mention this to Freya. She said the last part in a hushed whisper as she shivered, imagining what Freya would do to her if she found out that her child was smothering this boy into those melons she has as a chest. No sweat, Faye. And sorry, but I refuse your invitation, Miss Tsubaki. I'm a man of adventure and romancing about in the dungeon. Smithing isn't really my thing. But if you want suggestions about weapons, then we can talk later about ideas. Bell said as she bowed at the goddess before waving goodbye to the now retreating captain as she shut the door. Sorry you had to bear under Tsubaki's playfulness. She's been a bit lax due to the festivities coming up. If only she could be that energetic with her own work. Hephaestus muttered as she sat in her office chair and Bell sitting on the chair provided for him in the room. Meh, to each their own character. I don't try to judge them for that unless otherwise. So no, need to worry about things, Faye. Bell said as Hephaestus' eyes looked perplexed at what she called him. Pardon me, but, Faye. Oh, sometimes I overhear Lady Freya talk about you back at the manor. I asked a bit about you and why she would visit you more frequently. Something about talks for a project and that you two have some sort of wine or tea time together and talk stories. She told me to call you Faye since it was a cute nickname. Bell said as internally, Hephaestus wondered if Freya meant this to be innocent or intentional for the boy to be so familiar and lax to a god. Yeah. We do talk when I'm on break with her little project of hers or as I'm working on it. It's all ready for you. Can I ask why she couldn't make it in today? Usually, she's not as busy due to her little attendant assisting her work. Yeah, Haluan is a super attendant to Freya and the others. I sometimes help too if there's extra work or filing needing to be done or deliveries. Actually, there was an issue she found out from one of our deliveries that caused her to get absent and straighten it out. Bell answered, as he rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment, causing Hephaestus to be interested. Really now? I don't suppose you mind telling me. There's no real rush to hurry back, is there? She asked, silently hoping to hear another story as she was fixated to learn what happened next. When did I become so enamored about new gossip and stories? I swear, Freya, you're corrupting me and I worry for this boy. All right. It's kinda a funny story too, though I should have paid more attention about the directions that stupid Alan gave me. I ended up going to the wrong place and was stuck there for a while before Pops found me and helped me get to where I needed to go. He was very clingy to me and kept scowling around people when we left that place. Oh, so your member played a prank on you when you were working. Well, thankfully she's getting things resolved, though you should be more aware of your directions. Hopefully you didn't end up somewhere bad or got lost. Hephaestus said as she was somewhat worried and relieved this boy wasn't corrupted yet by the other members of Freya's Familia, smiling that there was some that was looking out for him. Nah, I don't think it was that bad. The ladies there were pretty kind and nice to talk to, though I couldn't understand some things they were saying, but the boss there told me not to worry about it yet. Bell said as he leaned back in his chair smiling as he recalled the experience. Well, that was kind of the manager. What place did you end up in? She asked as she leaned forward, now more interested in his story. This place called the Midnight's Vale in the Pleasure District. Bell said, completely not embarrassed and even had a smile on his face, causing the red-headed goddess to nearly fall off her chair and look at him with widened eyes with her hands at the edges of her desk. Hey, yeah, I kinda got lost and the boss there helped me settle in to adjust my surroundings and point the place I was supposed to go on the map. She sat me with some of her employees that were on break and sat around me. I thought I'd say thanks and order something in return for her help, and we ended up talking and stuff. What kind of stuff? Scratch that. Explain to me how. Hey, wait, how old are you? Hephaestus paused her surprised tone as she forgot what Freya said his age was. Oh, I'm 15. A 15-year-old, making his way to a delivery, get lost and go on the other side of Orario, to the Pleasure District of all places. She exclaimed as Bell stopped smiling and had his elbow resting on his knee and his chin resting on his fist, scowling in the memory of how he was tricked to getting lost. I blame that dumb idiot cat, idiot Alan. Dumbass wanted a race. Bell stated as soon he began to talk about the blunder he made 2 days ago. Flashback start. *CEI*. Bell moaned out as he had a messenger bag over his shoulders as it swung about by his hips, kicking up the air and having his hands behind his head as he was looking around, not wanting to acknowledge his guide who he could feel scowling at his prescience. I can't believe I got to guide this idiot to Ganesh's Familia Hall to deliver the final notice and paperwork for Monsterphilia when it's supposed to be my day off. That's my like you shitty rabbit. Why do I have to be your guide? And don't act like you know where Ganesh's is. Alan shouted back at him as he turned his head back. Never. Stopping as the two continued to walk along the town's pathways as Bell pulled out the city map and looked around. Not my fault you wrecked up the manor after chasing your wannabe boyfriend for a quickie. If you're gonna be runting like a mutt at the very least, you could do it somewhere where no sound can escape. Bell said with a small smirk on his face hidden behind the map. That was your fault, you fucker. No way would I ever consider Alfrig as an option. And I don't swing that way. Maybe get a girlfriend or a wife and I'll believe you. Or pay for a woman for some good times from what I remember my gramps talking about. Let's just hurry up and deliver these, and then go our separate ways. Bell said as for once, Alan was in agreement, though irritated at that cockiness of his. As they walked and saw Bell looking from the map to their surroundings, a thought came to Alan's mind as he grew a villain-like smile on his face before composing himself, stopping, and turned to Bell, haughty in attitude and in his tone. All right, you shitty rabbit, give me that map. You're probably gonna get us lost anyways. Alan said as he snatched the map, seeing the anger growing on Bell's face and his eye twitching from the name calling. Like you can read a map, stupid Alan. You must have gotten permanent brain damage after the first ass kicking I gave you. Well, not like a short rabbit like you is able to even get to where we're supposed to go quick. Enough. We're gonna be on the streets till nightfall with the way you need to reference check where we are every 5 seconds. Alan taunted more as he could see the veins popping out of Bell's head. And like you and your brain-damaged skull can even lead us. Wanna bet I can get there before you shrimp? You wanna go? Fine then. Show the way on the map and I'll deliver these faster than you can get there. Bell said as Alan held out the map and pointed where they were on it, guiding his finger a route to where Ganesh's home was located several times and making sure Bell saw the route to take. This is where we are right now. Taking this route and a few turns up ahead will get us to that Familia quick. You got that, bunny brat? Or want me to hold your hand while I drag your slow ass over there? Yeah, right. Like I'd even be slower than you where you couldn't even see me punch your stupid face. Besides, I don't want to make people assume you're cheating on your boy toy. Or the fact that you of all people are my bitch. I can do way better. Like making sadist animi. Bottom bitch. Bell said as Alan was growling as he shoved the map back into Bell's hands. As they both got ready to run. Loser has to clean the whole manor for a week and pay half of their earnings in the dungeon. From the week as well. Alan said as he crouched down and stared down the road. People, noticing them, soon moved away from the center and towards the sides. You must be crap at gambling then. All right. Ready. I'm all set, shitty rabbit. Okay then. Let's go, idiot Alan. Eat shit and fucking die, Cranel. Soon now all that was left was a large dust cloud in their wake as both men ran straight ahead, pushing each other by the shoulders and snarling, determined to overlap the other and hope the other would trip and fall. They matched each other in speed as they turned at every sharp corner and curve, hoping to get in the lead. From one's airborne perspective, it could have been a sight to see at the vast trails of dust clouds forming across the city as they ran further and further. A split street. This wasn't on the map, idiot Alan. Did you read it wrong? Bell said, as he noticed a split path ahead of them as Alan smirked in his mind. But snarled and responded back to Bell. Like I'm that stupid to mistake a road. But you are. There's 2 paths to take to Ganesh's Morin. And lucky for me, that's on the left. Screw you, I'll take that one. Then try and beat me then, stupid rabbit. Alan taunted before he felt his legs move off the ground. For a moment, he felt as though he was falling. But he heard a small *ding noise. And the immense pain below his waist right between his legs. Fuck gear. CC heap shot. I warned you not to call me a rabbit, Morin. Eat my dust and kiss the shit you landed on. Bell laughed about as he turned to the left at the split path. His laughter echoed for a few moments before it soon faded away to a calm silence in the area. Alan struggling up as he cupped his crutch as he smirked, smiling and turning away as he awkwardly shuffled back. That kid's gonna be in quite the trouble when he gets to that district. Now, to get me some ice and a ale, I fucking need it after this bullshit. Bell didn't notice even for a second Alan following him behind. Assuming he took the other direction to head to Ganesh's manor, he kept running, never stopping and focused solely ahead, until gradually slowing down at the sudden smell and decor of some of the buildings. The scent of lavender and something exotic filled his nostrils, wondering how something or someplace could smell heavily fresh and yet somehow wet. What perplexed him most was the buildings and people outside of them, as many were scantily clad women and Amazons, seeming to promote the building's vast difference and dragging men inside them. This is odd. I know I took the route that stupid cat pointed to. Maybe I should just dash. Sorry, but we tilde care to take a rest inside our humble establishment. A woman called out to him, getting his attention as he noticed the woman. She was quite the tall Amazoness, donned in nothing but a bra and thong, while her hips up to her thighs were covered in what could be called a see-through veil acting as short pants. One little visit wouldn't hurt now, will it, Tilda? I promise, you'll feel very satisfied and full of warmth by the time you're done, Tilda. Unless you can prove it by showing me your goods, then I'll pass. I doubt a place this small looking can fill me of my hunger or thirst, Bell said, completely missing the meaning behind her tone as the woman looked perplexed. Oh, Tilda. So bold, you want me to show you our goods? How forward. It's what the hostess did. Showed me. And believe me, they can fulfill my every order and request, and I still hunger more till I call it a night or when they are too tired to continue fulfilling me. Bell exclaimed as he clapped his hands out of pure passion at the thought of such savory meals he feasted and made by the girls of the pub, especially Ryu's and Syr's. T the hostess? The hostess of Fertility showed you. All of them. By God, Memo Mia showed me quite the feast, making me even hungrier to the point she nearly collapsed, and had the others take over for her till I was done for the day. Honestly, I can't see how this small place of yours can do a lot of business. Maybe practicing, or looking for some new exotic spices to attract customers, and maybe you'll make half of what I usually spend over there. Bell said as now other women of the area were jaw-dropped and nearly foaming at the mouth, and frothing below at how the boy explained of the services of the hostess he frequented, and the mention of all the woman serving him until he said and was still left wanting more, caused many of the younger Amazons to shake or collapse in sheer daydreaming fantasies. So, sad to say, no thanks. Good luck anyways, Bell said as he started to walk away, hoping to hurry and beat Alan at his own game. His peace lasted only a few moments before the Sounds of hurrying footsteps rang in his ears. Get him. His mind bitches. Go get another one for yourselves. Tell me more about the hostess's service. I promise to do better than them. You can use me to fulfill your fantasy. Half off of whatever you desire. I'll satisfy you for free all week. Hey! Belle's eyes widened as he turned back and was now in a full sprint. Now running. Away from the horde of Amazon women seeming to want his advice and his business at their establishment. He could hear the sounds of more footsteps joining in on the horde as he turned to every alleyway and jumped over through walls and climbed up the rooftops to try and avoid them. But there was more and more following with every turn and second. Crap, what is it with these women? Belle asked in complete confusion as he ran to his right, and down was another alley. Looking around as most of this area seemed to be a few bars. Blinking his eyes, he saw someone opening the door to one of the bars and looked at him. Her eyes widened at his as he hurried down the street. Belle saw the short woman motioning her hand to come inside, urging him as she tilted her head to see behind the horde of women, barely searching for him in this alley. Quick, kid. Quickly. She cried to him as Belle ran and dove inside the bar, crashing on the floor before rolling towards a large couch by the wall and hiding under it as the short woman closed it and shut the blinds. They waited in silence as they heard the loud footsteps and cries of women soon fading away. Are they gone? Is it safe to come out of this couch? Belle asked as the woman turned from the door and crouched down to where she could see parts of his hair peeking out underneath the couch, smiling as she nodded. You're fine now, boy. They mind me asking why most of the whores are out and about, chasing after your cute face? She asked as Belle noticed by her tone she was more mature. Then her appearance gave off, dusting himself off as he noticed now how short the woman was. She barely reached a little over his waist, maybe around his stomach. Oh, you're a Paolum. My bad, I assumed you were around my age but just short. Though, you look great for being older than me. Belle said as he bowed his head and rubbed the back of his head, hearing the woman giggling as he felt her hand gently patting his head. Aren't you just a cute charmer? I can see part of why those whores are after your little bunny downstairs. But that's not quite enough. Mind telling me more about you and why you're here? She asked as she walked over behind the bar and sat down atop a tall stool. Belle followed and sat at the bar as the Paolum woman offered him a glass of water, drinking it as he set the cup aside. Well, I'm Belle Cranel, and I was sent to deliver these forms and paperwork from my goddess to Ganesh's Familia in preparation for Monsterphilia. I did have someone with me to deliver the other forms we had, and he showed me the quickest path to get there, Belle said, as he brought out a map and pointed out where he was initially. So a delivery then. Well, can't say I particularly blame you about being in a rush. A lot of familiars are scrambling around to get things ready for customers soon to come. And here, we're no exception. The Paolum woman said as she refilled his cup, but soon looked at him, with a dull look on her face at the boy. But, you really should pay attention what you say and where you are. I bet that cute little tongue of yours said something misleading, and that's what got those bitches hornier than rabbits, she said as Belle tilted his head to the side, making the woman blink a few times, before coming close to his face. You really have no idea where you are, do you? She asked. Not particularly. From what I saw around, there was a lot of bars and other pubs, and something smelling sweet and food in the air. So I thought this was like a food district. Given, from what I heard, the people taking about filling needs and making you quite satisfied and full, Belle said with complete honesty, making the Paolum's jaw drop. I think it's best to show you by a hard approach. What do you dash? *CLAP, *. All right, ladies. We've got a special customer. Come out and show him a good time. She cried out as from the other room entrance and down the flight of stairs, Belle heard multiple footsteps and soon saw other girls coming towards him. He felt suffocated at the mass hands around him and pushing him into their bodies and breast. Oh, Tilda, he's such a cutie boss. He's like a little bunny. Can we keep him for ourselves? Oh, Tilda, such a firm body, Tilda, with such a cute face. I wonder how you'll put me to bed, Tilda. Oh, such a cute boy. How about you call me Mommy, Tilda? Boss, you bring us a cute, short white hair boy with a rocking bod that's not passing out after being smothered by Reiku's fat tits. Is it my birthday? You brought me a hung shota. Thank you. Soon, Belle was pulled out by the Paolum woman, blinking and letting out a breath of air he didn't know he was holding. Turning back, he saw the woman better this time. The first to call him a little bunny was rather a short Amazon woman, around his height and age, give or take a few years. The other that asked him about how he'd put her to bed was a pale woman with purple hair. Most notably was her violet or red eye, one covered by her long hair, and dressed in a very tight skin black dress, cut open to where most of her body was on show, and saw her laying down on the couch, scratching her rather plump ass. The one suggested him to call her mommy was big. That was the first word that came to his mind as he saw her again, blinking over and over, looking at the tall woman, appearing she was from the Far East, having long, purple-black hair draping over her back to the point if she hadn't tied it, it would have fallen on the floor. Her attire was something akin to being a mix of robes and a skin-tight purple outfit, where Belle swore it was reflecting light off her body as Belle was intently staring where it was, reflecting on her breast area as well as her thighs and ass. And he shivered in an odd way when his eyes traveled down from her long legs to where her boots started, long, black and gold in design as they reached from her mid-thighs to her soles, noticing they were like a mix of open-toed sandals and wedges as well, matching the similar gloves on her arm reaching to her forearm, as she adjusted the loose cloth that was strapped around her waist and breast. The last one he saw perplexed him, as she was the woman that was very excited for him, as she was an elven woman, with short white hair and amethyst eyes. Her clothes emphasized on her ass as she wore tight purple leggings and only a white short coat cut to her midriff and had only a white bra on and white boots. Turning back to the owner of this establishment, seeing the Paolum woman smirking in satisfaction at the look on his face, blushing as it came tumbling to him, and now noticing the owner's apparel being a simple layered robe like the ones in the land of East, though she was showing off her shoulders and what could kindly be called string covering her chest, and so part of what he assumed was her shorts or dress skirt from over the bar. I'm in the pleasure district and I've been walking past a lot of brothels, haven't I? I'm surprised it took you this long to find out, Tilda. I'm the owner of this humble little resting brothel, the Midnight's Veil. You can call me Laruka. And the girls letting you feel them up. By force are Lane Natali, Sect, Reiku, and lastly Fortuna. Ah, I guess. I kind of forgot what my shitty Gramps was talking about when describing this sort of thing. He said I would have fun around here when I get older, but since it was shitty Gramps, I never took him seriously. Belle said with a faint hint of pink on his cheek as he slowly sipped on his water, before being whisked away by the girls, and now found himself surrounded on all sides in his lap with Sect laying her body on his lap and the other girls. What's this about a bad grandpa? Rough past? Lena asked as she was the one closest to him, as she was on his right shoulder, with Reiku hugging his head and made soft cooing noises, and rocked him gently. Poor sweetie, left to a pervy grandpa a lot. Was Mama too busy? Reiku asked, worried for Belle as she was going heavily on her motherly instincts to hug the boy, as Fortuna smirked and brushed some of Belle's locks on his head at the idea he was raised by a pervert of a man to teach him the ways of lust. Kinda. I mean, I wouldn't call my past that bad. Though, I never knew my parents. Gramps never talked about them a lot, and usually we were working on the farms, and I had to deal with his stupid antics. Belle admitted as he found the company oddly comforting. For a while, he was just talking with the girls of the Midnight Veil and was surprised to hear about their lives and what they do, aside the obvious profession here. Lena was part of the Ishtar Familia and was in their experienced dungeon team, and was surprised she started earlier here in Orario than him, as she was a level 2. Sect was naturally lazy, and she rarely ever worked. The way she was able to work here was due to the help of Laruka saving her, as according to her, something about some thugs and her nearly causing a mountain to fall with her strength and magic. She settled to just be a level 1 for the rest of her days and get men to fall asleep so they could rob them blind. Reiku was honestly interesting in various ways to Belle. She was actually a mother, and told how she would still worry about her babies even though they are grown up and have their own life. She was from the Far East and was experienced in the brothels of her home. So she decided to provide a motherly service to the patrons for comfort and the usual relief. Though, she was very selective of who to take on for clients or escort dates. The last few men that tried to be rough with her were left broken and were lucky enough to be able to have any offspring in the future. It was unknown even to the girls what level she was, but it was terrifying to see her fight or get mad. Fortuna was honestly a breath of fresh air compared to the stuck-up elves he had seen and experienced around Orario so far. She honestly preferred getting physical with people, as she was a nymphomaniac and very proud of it. She moved here when she heard that Ishtar was opening a pleasure district and signed up for the opportunity. She was also a mother apparently, technically speaking, as she had a niece she looked after back home before moving here. She wished she would have taken her niece, but she explained how an idiot she was and had the mindset and attitude of a child, while also being old fashioned despite being about 17 to 18. Last she heard of her niece was the fact she settled down at a nearby kingdom and was interested in taking part of government work. Later on, as they were talking, heavy footsteps were heard coming. As Belle tensed and was ready to run to the back, while the girls and Laruka readied their weapons or any furniture to use as one as the door slammed opened. All blinking at the heaving male elf now entered in their establishment as Belle's eyes widened. "Oh, pups, what are you doing here?" Belle asked as the girls blinked and looked to see that it was Hayden of Freya's Familia, now looking up at Belle and hurried over to him, hands on his shoulders and shaking the boy worryingly before hugging him close to his side. "What am I doing here? What are you? We sent you with Alan to head to Ganesh's over 2 hours ago. We got no word from Alan or you. I've been trying to find you by your trail from what bystanders were talking about some sort of race," Hayden said worryingly as Belle laughed and sighed in a mix of self-disappointment and tiredness. "Yeah, Alan showed me where to take to get to Ganesh's quickly, but he sent me over here, and I kinda got chased down by some of the women, but thankfully Miss Laruka here and the staff were kind and helped me hide from them," Belle said as he introduced Hayden to the girls. As he bowed his head, "Ah, I see. Thank you for taking care of this idiot, and not in that way, right? Relax, Hildeslife. Your son is quite the charmer, but he made it apparent he's not ready for our services yet. He was tempted, but he said when he felt ready. Tilda Laruka said as Belle became red at being sold out. "Well, at least you know restraint and are responsible about these things," Hayden said as he looked away, now feeling awkward about this, before his hands were grasped by both Fortuna and Reiku. "Oh, so this is your father, Belle-chan. My, he looks young. How about we get to know each other, Mr. Hayden? Belle-chan has been talking about you a bit," Reiku said, heavy with her far East dialect accent and smiling. "So you're this cute boy's stud of a father? What say you and I become his binding parents and give him a sibling? Or would you like me to take you both in bed, Tilda?" Fortuna offered as Hayden became scarlet at that offer coming from a fellow elf. "Mao Tilda no fair tuna. I want to be Hayden and Belle's mommy and wife." Reiku pouted at the white-haired elf, not noticing that both men's noses were now leaking blood as they tried to cover and stop them, with Laruka snickering and slamming down on the bar. "Belle, what have you been telling these women? And I'm afraid to ask about the other two," Hayden yelled, now red and with some blood on his face, as he pointed at the girls near him and the other two on the couch. Oh, no, don't worry about me, Mr. Hayden. While you're somewhat attractive, I prefer guys my age," Lena said as she fidgeted in her seat and poked her fingers together, while Sect simply yawned and turned her body away. "And I'm too lazy to try. Buy my services and I'll give you what I can. But I'll be too lazy to make a move on you," Sect said as Hayden oddly felt relieved but partly wounded at the purple-haired woman's offer, if he could even call it that. Well, I've been talking with them about life and stuff about me. And I talked about you and how I plan to help you get a good girl. Uncle Hogney mentioned once that it's been a while since you dated or pursued love. So I thought, why not help my pops pursue romance?" Belle said with complete honesty, to only get punched on top of the head and now nurse the steaming lump that formed. "Idiot. Well, I thank you for looking after this idiot of mine," Hayden said as he grabbed hold of him by the back of his collar and started to drag him to the door, turning back as the ladies waved at them. Take care, I suppose. And good festivities for you to come," Hayden stuttered out, still perplexed this was all happening. "Man pops, you do need my help. Well, see you around, Lena, Sect, Miss Fortuna, Miss Reiku, Miss Laruka. I might pop by for a visit and to talk some more if you're willing," Belle said as mentally Hayden was shaking his head and wondering how this boy had the balls To not be embarrassed from all this. Take care, Belle Tilda. Come by anytime, sweetie Tilda. Mama will be here for cuddles. And I'll be here whenever you want to practice in the bedroom. Or for your dad. Asterisk yon asterisk take care. Kid. ZZZZZZ. Maybe I'll see you in the dungeons sometimes, Belle. Good luck on your deliveries. They called out as they said their goodbyes. Shutting the door behind him, Hayden sighed. And soon ran off into a full sprint across the district, holding Belle close and away from the wenches and cheap whores attempting to get their attention. Belle was laughing as he heard Hayden's cries of rejection to the women of the pleasure district, and more so at how flustered he was becoming as they passed down more scantily dressed women and some even showing their bare tits. Heh, well at least now I know to try and avoid these types of women to look for pops. I gotta think and find a nice girl for him. Maybe someone responsible and knows how to relax. On occasion. Oh, I should get him a girl that wears glasses too like him. Belle thought as he was continued to be dragged out of the pleasure district and now headed towards Ganesh's. Flashback end. I'm kinda surprised you managed to find people that would help you and not in their usual way. But what happened after your delivery? Hephaestus said, slightly relieved that the boy was fine and apparently had common sense to handle about the pleasure district. Well, apparently Alan never delivered his part, so they had to punish him when we got back home. Then when Lady Freya asked what happened with me, well, she said she needed today and yesterday to prepare a punishment for Alan. I've never seen her that pissed at all. Belle said as he slightly shivered at the haunting face on his goddess. I pity that poor child. But what about you? Did you get punished for that idiot's actions? Hephaestus asked as Belle shook his head and laughed as he waved his hands in front of her. And no. You don't have to worry about that. I told her what happened and she was relieved. I was smart about the situation. Though she was proud of me for thinking about Pop's future. She was worried about him not taking it easy and settling down after all his years in the Familia. So she was relieved to hear about my idea for him. Belle said as he chuckled, leaning back on his chair and looked at the red-headed goddess. Now, what about you, Lady Faye? Belle asked as Hephaestus blinked and looked surprised. I am, excuse me. What's been going on with you? I bet that things have been pretty busy. Especially with Lady Freya constantly visiting and talking with you. Why not speak your mind? I'm not in a rush to hurry back. Belle said as Hephaestus looked at the boy and wanted to cry. Someone will actually listen to me. Is there a god for us gods? Why you sure? This could take a while. I'm all ears. I heard that you and my goddess briefly talked about some of your children. So, let me hear some gossip. Belle said as he smiled and snickered in his seat, not noticing the smile on Hephaestus's face and the lone tear falling from her eye. Hours had passed, as now it was already sunset across Orario. Their talks filled the room, with loud annoyed rants of Hephaestus and her idiot genius children she had. Her own bitter sorrow how people expect her to listen, but no one wants to hear about her. Laughters at past stories of one another. Sadly as the sun set, so did their conversation needed to come to an end. Handing the boy Freya's order, tightening the packaging so the boy wouldn't open it or take a peek inside. The boy placed it in his bag and slung it over his shoulder, bowing at the goddess as he headed for the door. Oh, by the way, Lady Faye, if you ever want to talk some more, then drop by the manor. Lady Freya's been discussing about having a get-together with some other gods to chat about their days, so maybe we can talk more then. Belle said as Hephaestus nodded at his suggestion. That would be nice actually. I'll bring some drinks once in a while. Hopefully I'll be able to join in on your god's tea party. Well, take care and get plenty of rest, Lady Faye. And I'll try to knock some sense into that wealth guy if I meet him. Have a good night. Belle said as he shut the door back on him and left the office. Hephaestus sighed in content and relaxed in her chair. Never had she felt this light on her shoulders, or body for that matter. Looking at the door once again, she could still picture Belle. They're standing and smiling at her. You seem to have had some fun with my Belle, Faye Tilda. Gah! Hephaestus yelled as she fell off her chair, looking behind her window to see Freya there, seeming to sit on the air as the window was opened, to reveal that it was Hayden. That assisted Freya and both stepped inside her office. Don't scare me like that woman, and don't you dare get jealous. You sent him to me. That I did, Tilda, and this is what I expected to happen. You needed someone to listen and get your issues out of your system. Belle does have a way with people. But don't you forget whose familia he belongs to. Yeah, you horny woman. But why are you and the elf here? Hephaestus asked as she soon got back on her chair as Hayden stepped forward and pushed his glasses up. If it wouldn't be much trouble. I have to ask, what does this gift for Belle do exactly? Hayden said as Hephaestus looked at the elf and then to Freya, who nodded in approval before turning back to the concerned Hayden. In history, there's been records of you gods giving humans gifts or weapons, and even the first blessings. But something bugs me about this gift. I'm only aware the fact that this weapon is said to suit Belle as he grows. But what I want to know is how it will grow alongside him. Hayden said as he pushed his glasses up, as they gleamed white before the God's view. Chapter end notes. For those curious about Laruka's appearance, imagine an older mature-looking familia. Palum girl and Shuten Dodger combined. Also, part of this work and chapter was drawn inspiration by another Danmachi fanfic, called Under the Courtesan's Veil. Absolutely recommend it, and I pray the author updates it more often. Monsterphilia's Nightmare. Belle Cranel enters. Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter 4. Notes. Monsterphilia's Nightmare. Belle Cranel enters. The air around Orario was bustling with the sweet scent of delicacies and variety of food, floating in the air. Many tourists and children seeming to run about on the packed roads as carriages rode down, walking about the streets with wonder in his eyes as he couldn't stop moving his head back and forth. Too amazed at everything and anything in sight, Belle wondered if his face would freeze from excitement. With a spring in his step, he was about to hop over several people in glee and excitement, if it wasn't for the sudden pull on the back of his collar to prevent him from doing so. Gah! Come on, Pops. Why do you have to hold me back from seeing the festival? Belle whined as he was dragged back. The grip on his yellow button-up shirt tightened as his boot-covered feet were dragged and he was forcefully turned towards him. His hat that he bought from one of the stalls recently fell off but rested on his back thanks to the strap it had. You can look later. We're supposed to meet with Lady Freya first. She apparently has a surprise for you that needed time. Then and only then can you go about looking at the festivities of Monsterphilia. Hayden said as he let go of Belle abruptly. While Belle understood they needed to meet with Freya first, he couldn't help but pout at how Hayden had to be rude and just drop him without warning. Getting up and dusting off his black pants from any dirt and fixing his button up, he placed back his orange hat, donned with red beads and 2 faces on it, and followed him. Harsh they don't you think, brother? But why spoil the fun on a day like today? I'm sure Lady Freya wouldn't see the harm in us bringing her something back while we're waking to. Huh. Like maybe a mask from one of the booths. Hogni suggested as he pointed out the vast games and stalls they were walking past by. Oh yeah, maybe even bring her some sweets like funnel cakes and crepes. She was meeting with some goddess at a cafe, right? Sweets go well with a cafe. Right, you are my young pupil. And a gift from us would make her day even better. Gifts from her children and Monsterphilia. It'll be a grand old time and fill her with joy. Hogni and Belle said as the two danced around Hayden and stopped to pose at him, pointing their fingers at him while covering part of their faces. However, they weren't expecting them now to be face down on the dirt road, groaning and having several large lumps on their heads, steaming and glowing red as Hayden's hand was clenched tight and smoke coming off from it, his glasses gleaming pure white, and his face shadowed as he looked down at them. Quit that. It's fine if you do that duo crap at home, but public it's unbearable, Hayden said as he forced the two idiots up on their feet and started to drag them by their shirts, ignoring their cries and protest along the way as he took lead in heading towards the designated place. In said cafe, where Hayden and the others are to meet, sat two goddesses across from one another at the table, sitting in the outdoor balcony, the shade cooling them and their guest as they sat in moderate silence, saving the sound of ice melting and moving in the glass. So, mind telling me why you brought up this meeting, Freya? You aren't the type to suddenly invite people for a simple chat. Freya paused for a moment, glass in hand as she pulled it away from her lips before she could take a drink, playfully pouting at the goddess as she set it down and rested her chin on the back of her hand and leaned forward. Oh, then you must have not heard about me and Faye's little get-togethers lately. Believe me, we do talk and gossip so much now that time seems to just slip by us. Could it be that you feel all alone, Loki tilde, Freya said, teasing Loki at being wrong to assume she wouldn't mind having a nice chat with other gods if she felt like it. Faye, why would I need to hang with you and gossip when I have my precious Ace to GH? Loki coughed as she was going to give Ace a hug, until the blonde sword princess jabbed her own goddess by the throat. Please mind your hands, Lady Loki, Ace said in a monotone voice, already bored to her goddess's antics. She briefly flinched as she noticed Otter and Freya's eyes aiming towards her, as she stared at the two, though her eyes widened a bit at looking atop Otter's head. What happened to your A? Did you fight a monster worthy to harm you, King? She asked, in anticipation and wonder, calling Otter by his epitaph, as she even had difficulties to injure him to the point any scratches would leave a mark on his body in their past fights. No, rather an interesting sparring session caused this. I admit, even he made me consider going all out when I felt blood trickling down my head, Otter said, as Loki and Ace blinked and absorbed what they saw with their own eyes. Otter was smiling, looking up and smiling at the ceiling as though he was reminiscing. So, your kids are growing up in the world, Fry. Which of them did it to your king? Alan, perhaps. Or maybe Hayden. I've been hearing quite a lot of rumors about your familia lately. Which reminds me, I need to have a word with your rabbit, Loki said with coy, malicious intent in her throat as Freya smiled even brighter at her tone. Well, to answer your first question, it was said rabbit that left a mark on Otter, Freya said, as Loki and Ace looked wide at her. Loki nearly choking on her drink as she wiped off the contents and drool from her mouth and slammed the table. Bullshit. He did. You can tell if I'm lying, which I am not, and this is the scar to prove it. His, rather, wild and ambitious, Otter said as he tried best to describe Bel to the god, but not everything, as he didn't want to paint a target on him. Also, don't call him a rabbit when he comes here. He gets a bit ticked when you call him that. He did injure Alan several times because of it. And remember, he nearly neutered your mutt about a month and a half ago, right? Freya said as Loki stiffened and grumbled back into her seat. Noted. But he's got some explaining to do as to why the king and queen of the Elf Forest is coming here in nearly a month. I don't know why Reveria agreed and told about the rumors of her and that boy that they were true, but because of him I have the royal elves on my ass, and my elven children are worried shitless. Oh, come now, Loki. You didn't think to question 9 hells yourself. Hayden explained to me that it was part of a bet my Belle made with her, and she lost quite badly. Even the witch can testify if you still doubt it, Freya said as she was enjoying every moment Loki's anger riled and diminished. Faye, still, that brat of yours is something. Okay, now really, why did you call me out here? Aside from wanting a chat, hey? You and I dash. We're here. Sorry for making you wait, Lady Freya, Bel and Hogni said as they waved at their goddess and Otter, prompting them to be lightly smacked upside their heads by Hayden, who walked past them and bowed briefly at the 2 goddesses at the table. Apologies for the wait, Lady Freya. We would have been here sooner, hadn't these 2 idiots insisted about playing some of the games and festivities along the way, Hayden said as he pushed his glasses up with a small pout and his eye twitching, feeling what was to come. Already. It's a festival, Pops. And it's my first one here in Orario. We've got to make some memories. So when we look back on it later on after you meet a nice woman, you can reminisce. Yeah, brother. I want to sit down on a nice couch, look at the photos with my future nieces and nephews and say about how happy you were when celebrating your son's first monsterphilia. Hogni joined in as Freya was snickering and Loki watched, baffled that Hayden was now acting like a dad and pulling Bel's cheeks and scolding him. Esche Goddess. Who OW? Who's the cute redhead? A friend? Bel asked innocently, as Freya blinked, before smiling sweetly at Bel, but emanating an aura of envy at Loki, who, in her eyes, had the audacity to look flustered at the compliment and now looking like a swooned maiden. Yes, she is. Bel, this is the goddess of mischief, Loki. We've met her before, remember? Back at the pub after your baptism. Though call me curious, why did you call her cute? She asked sweetly, wanting to scare Loki even further as she wanted to know the reason why her sweet Bel found cute about this mischief goddess. We did. Ah, my bad. Sorry if I didn't pay attention to you, Miss Loki. I kinda was kicking the crap out of your stupid captain for messing with Tyon's heart. Though I'm not apologizing to him. He's a married man and only thinks about Paolum women. Unforgivable. Bel said as he shook his fist as Hogni and even Otter of all people were, nodding in agreement with Bel. It's fine, and yeah, Finn can be different, but he's got to handle this now since you practically drilled it in the twins' head. He ought to propose properly and dash. Wait a sec, they aren't even married. Pups, we need to find a large hall to hold our Familia, and we need a large catering reception. Hell, I'll even suck it up and wear a fancy tux if I have to. We need to get Tyon married ASAP. Bel said in a hurried panic and muttering in his head of the plans and what they would need for a wedding. Bel, relax. Marriage is a long process that doesn't come right away. I've seen many lovers wait years before taking that most important dash. Freya was then cut off by Bel's outburst once again as he looked around at all of them. Otter, quick, what's the best place we can go to for a custom dress for Lady Freya and Tyon? We got to make this grand and them to look even lovelier than usual. LL, lovelier than usual. Freya whispered as pink dusted her cheeks. Oh, Lady Freya, you should inaugurate the wedding. It's perfect. You could give your blessing to Tyon to have a wonderful and happy life. You gave her your approval, so a wedding held by a goddess of love is perfect. It'll be a wonderful and marvelous wedding. Bel said as he aggressively held onto her shoulders, forcing her to look into his gleeful eyes, practically sparking in wonder at the idea she would wed Tyon off. Can't you picture it, my lady? Roses, family, friends and loved ones all around celebrating a wonderful day of romance into their next lives, blessed by you. A beautiful day it would be for everyone. By this point, Freya's face was completely red. The way he talked about planning this wedding as though he would make it happen by himself. How passionate he talked about her, giving blessings to the lovely couples, causing her to imagine a wedding, but with Bel standing at the altar, waiting for her. TTT, that's not happening yet, you bashful rabbit. Loki screamed out, snapping Bel and Freya back into reality as they both looked at now the tomato-faced goddess as she was, breathing heavily and standing up. If they are gonna have a wedding, then it'll be US that throws it. While I appreciate your concern and thoughtfulness of throwing one for Tyon, we're her Familia. So, the responsibility is on us. Invite us to the wedding and make me the ring bearer and Tiona the flower girl. Bel said, as if not backing away from wanting to handle this by himself. However, he could understand where Loki was coming from. It was their Familia, so he shouldn't have gotten so gun-ho about planning it all. Fine. And, sorry about the, you know what, calling. Just needed to get you and Fry's attention. Free. Earth to horny woman. Loki yelled as Freya shook her head and looked back to Loki. Thank us. She doesn't want to kill me for her child's compliment of me now. I owe you one. Kid, your talk of romance and marriage to her set her in a better mood than earlier, Loki said, in her mind as she looked briefly at Bel as he stepped back from his goddess. So, aside talking, what did you initially call me for, and why are they here? Loki asked, switching the topic back to what she wanted answers to, as Freya shook her head and held out her hand as though pointing towards Bel. I thought it would be nice to properly introduce my newest and favorite child to you. Since you're showing off your precious AIS-10, was it? Bel Cranel, newest member of my Familia. As I said before, Bel, this is Goddess Loki, and she is. Freya then held her hand out towards A's, waiting for her to continue this conversation. Loki had to nudge the blonde girl as she was lost in a daze, looking at Bel with her golden eyes, staring at him all, from his black boots upwards along his black pants, to his button-up shirt that showed his built arms, to his charming, cute face and red eyes, piercing into hers, with the dull look he gave, and noticing the orange hat strapped on his back. A's Wallenstein, we've met before, but I look forward to exploring the dungeons and crossing paths with you one day, she said as she bowed lightly at Bel, who only looked at her with a dull gaze and pouted. I guess it's all right. Bel. Hayden said as he looked at him as to not try to cause a scene for the two gods to become angry. If you don't take any more of my kills from me, then I look forward to maybe crossing paths. Then, he finished, providing a hint as to why he wasn't too thrilled about meeting her again. Something in which Freya and Loki picked up and nodded towards one another, and yet could only shake their head as the blonde sword princess was lost in a daze once again. I'll have her party keep note about that boy. A's can be a bit dash. Lost in thoughts, Hogni said, a toddler with only thoughts of dungeon diving. Hayden said rather bluntly but trying to undersell it. Focus-driven and two-tunnel vision. Otter chimed in, but also couldn't help but shake his head at one of his rivals being this dense at the situation. A dumbass. Bell said as his mouth was clamped over his mouth by Hayden. But that didn't stop himself, Hogni, Otter and even the goddess to let out a stifled chuckle or laugh as A's looked at them all in confusion. Well, yeah, so you'll have to forgive her on that. Teasing Loki's child aside. Do you recall that item I had you pick up for me from Hephaestus Bell? And why last night I updated your status, and it showed an impressive jump? Freya said as she was giddy to surprise him. More so about how excited he looked, and how he smiled at recalling last night's status update. Yeah. Oh man, I'm so close I can taste the middle floors soon enough with Pops and the others. But what was that item you had Lady Faye make? A cool armor piece. Jewelry. A muzzle for Alan. Bell said as he was pumping his fist up and down in excitement. Alan's been punished enough for now. But, close your eyes and hold out your hands. Freya said as Bell shut his eyes as tight as possible, making both goddesses giggle at how childish he was right now. Especially how he held both of them out like a kid waiting to get his present with a goofy smile on his face, signaling Otter and Hayden. Otter retrieved the wrapped item from his pouch behind him and Hayden took out a rectangular box from his robe, setting it gently on the table as Freya began to unwrap the item first, then opening the box. Loki's and A's eyes widened in surprise and winced at the item, as the beams from the sun shined in their faces as soon as it was uncovered, watching as Freya carefully picked it up and put it inside the open box's contents before moving over towards Bell's hands. That's what Faye's been working on for you, Freya. I know she was good, but for it to even send me shivers up my spine, that's some scary stuff. Loki first thought when she saw the item Freya unwrapped, nearly biting her lower lip enough to draw a trickle of blood. But what on earth was she doing to make it that way? No way was she distracted even if Freya was talking gossip with her. She's the god of weapons and smiths. Did it have something to do with the boy? To make a weapon that warped and heavy with such pressure? She continued as she watched Freya gently place the item in his hands, closing his fingers around it shut as she backed away. You can open them now, Bell. Freya said as she had her hands closed and pressed together, tightly, moving them close to her lips as she was practically kissing her fingers in anticipation of his reaction to the gift he now held. Bell, following his goddess's order, opened his eyes immediately, only to wince and blink several times to adjust himself. His vision blurred for a moment as he looked down at his hands, closed around the item he was given. By its looks, it was a large knife in a purple-black sheath, having straps attached to it as he thought it was meant to be on his hips or attached to the back of his pants. Noticing how the handle of the knife was rather long and the tsuba was that like a katana, a weapon of the far east from what he remembered Tsubaki telling him about. The guard, no wait, the tsuba of this looks like one from a katana. Yet, it looks kinda like the top of a bell. Now, what does this look like? He thought as with a slow move of his hands, he had one on the handle and the other on the sheath of the knife. All watched as he slowly pulled off the sheath of his knife and saw how his eyes widened and his mouth opened only a little in sheer or at the sight of the weapon. It was a rather large blade, constructed to as though it was layered and split apart. Starting at the base of the tsuba was the large metal part of the knife, having an etched engraving in the center in the shape of a tall rectangle. Upon closer look, it was made completely of small runes and hieroglyphics. The edges of the knife were multiple, as though the whole thing was a double-edged dagger in of itself. The knife set below the lower half of the rune rectangle looked as though it was a jagged knife of 3 sections, growing sharper and sharper as the blade went up, to only then once at the tip of the blade did the edges on the back of it shine with such sharpness till it reached around and began the second blade of the knife. Above the other half of the rectangle runes was a smaller blade set, double-edged as well. For all he had done, observing it intently, never did he notice the tears now falling from his eyes, worrying his familia and causing Loki to panic and even make a show a worried expression on her face. Oi, Freya, what on earth did you have Faye make? His crying, Loki said in a hushed whisper as Freya was waving her hands in place, wondering what went wrong with this, hoping she didn't cause Bell any pain or harm at the gift she wanted to give him. Hey, Bell, Belle, come on. Snap out of it. What's wrong with the knife, Belle? You can tell. Me, please. Belle. Belle. Hug me, check if he's breathing. Hayden said as he stood in front of Belle and shook him by the shoulders, trying to get him to look at him at least, but to no avail and, much to his worry, did Lady Hephaestus used something cursed with this knife. Should we bring her over? Hogni asked aloud, snapping both gods' attention to him, and their eyes widened in worry. Otter, hurry and retrieve Hephaestus here as fast as you can. Drag her here if need be. A's, get Mama Reveria here too. We'll see if dash. *HHHIC*. All of them paused as they looked back at Belle, his shoulders shaking as more tears fell now onto the floor, his lips quivering as his eyes were shining with the tears he could no longer keep in. Now he was looking at Freya, smiling with quivering lips and holding the knife up, with two hands, shaking and trembling. *HIC*T this, *sniffle gift. *sniffle the most though or, T thoughtful. Gift, you could give me goddess. He sobbed out as he immediately went over to Freya, kneeling down and wrapping his arms around her waist as he cried into her stomach. His muffled moans brought the two gods to smile, and admittedly had them now wiping the tears in their own eyes at how pure and genuine he was at receiving such a meaningful gift. I am so happy that you liked it, Belle. You've been working so hard since joining me, and I thought, why not reward you with a gift from me to help you reach your goal in the dungeon? I was worried if it wasn't enough. Freya cooed at the crying boy around her waist, combing through his hair softly and slow, to nearly laugh and giggle at the feeling of him shaking his head before pulling away from her. His eyes were somewhat puffy and red as he rubbed them to brush off the lingering tears in the corner of his eyes as he held the knife closer to him. And no, this is perfect. I love it. Thank you, goddess. I words can't even begin to tell how thankful I am to you and to Lady Faye for this beautiful gift. Belle exclaimed as then he was hugged around by his neck and slapped on his back, as Hogni was stiffening his own tears and laughing with the boy. Just do your best in the dungeon with us from now on then, my young nephew. Show your thanks by improving and growing stronger without Lady's gift to you. Hogni said as now he had trouble composing himself at such a heartfelt moment Belle was having. I expect you to at least be responsible for it. A gift from our goddess is something we've all received, and it should be treasured as much as our devotion to her. Hayden said as he huffed and pushed his glasses up, but for a moment rubbed his eyes with his own fingers. Especially so, given your involvement to Cranel's gift. Hayden, Otter said with some tone of amusement in his voice, making Hayden freeze and Freya to smirk as Otter sent her a glance. After his words, Otter's right, Belle. This is a very special gift not just from me and Faye. View you at Tilda. Lady Freya, please. This was also a gift from Hayden to you, she said as she waved her arms up in glee at that last part. Hayden slowly turning his head back to Belle, as his eyes were wide once more and looked at him in shock. See, while Hayden knew about my gift for you, he was insistent of learning what it was. So, he joined me when I went to deliver the last payment for your gift, and he couldn't stop questioning Faye about what she made for you, and spent all night then to gather the valise needed for that special sheath to go with your new knife. Freya said as Hayden looked back and fought at her and to Belle, waiting for one of them to make things much worse for him. Yet, to no surprise, it was Belle that seemed to put him in an awkward position, mainly by crushing him to the point where he felt as though his heart would crawl up his throat and rest on his tongue. GHHHHH. *HIC**T hank you shoo much pops. Okay. HGNH. Why you've made your point. Now, let go of me. Brother's right, Belle, it's time for the most important part of this gift. Hogni said, grabbing Belle's attention as Hayden was gasping for air and lying on the floor to rest. We have to give this beauty a name. A proper and awesome name, since it'll be your weapon. That will always be by your side from her on out. Hogni said as Belle then joined him in, thinking for a good name for his knife. Both side by side, squinting their eyes and having their fingers wrapped around their chin as they began to think. It's quite odd yet terrifying how in sync these idiots are. Hayden said as he pressed his hands against his back, cracking it and moving his neck to loosen his muscles and joints from his idiot son's show of affection and thanks. Oh, I got it. How about Red Princess? as a nod and a thanks to Lady Hephaestus for working hard on creating this. Bell said as he held up the knife, unknowingly making Freya smile with envious emotions and looking at Bell. Bell, why the name Red Princess? She asked sweetly to him, but for the others it sounded like pure venom in their ears. Oh, well, the red part is based on Faye due to her having red hair and also the handle being wrapped around in red cloth that shines like her own. And I kinda recalled about an old weapon from some stories similar to the color red and about being a princess whose voice would patch up her lover's wounds. Bell said, oblivious to Freya's jealousy. Though a positive side to his explanation was that it was diminishing her jealous feelings as there was reason to it. I do recall something about the Far East saying something about a red thread of destiny, though I personally think this name would suit it better, blood-slaughtering prong knife. Hogni said as both Goddess and A's face palmed at such a name for it. That sounds so. Loki was about to add her input before she was interrupted by Hayden and Bell. Holy crap, that sounds badass. I can see it, no. The amount of blood and cuts I'd make on hunting monsters. Bell exclaimed as he slashed the air a few times to emphasize what he could do to a monster in the dungeon. That's actually not bad coming from you of all people, Hogni. I can see its practicality as well. Personally, I would have suggested Neo Armstrong Cyclone Jet Armstrong Cannon, with a nice quality touch to it, but that name seems to fit better. Otter added his own opinion into the conversation, which was now scaring the goddesses. No way. My own children, her kids' names for it are almost as bad as the gods and that. Welfo Crozo kid child of Fays. Both thought in horror as they looked at one another, nodding to not allow them to decide upon that name for Bell's knife. Come on, Freya. Think of something better for Bell. I couldn't hide my embarrassment if he calls out his sword each time in public. Damn it. What's a better name for the brat's knife? I hate to admit it, but that blood slaughtering part does sound cool, but it's too childish. Think brain, think. Rabbit fangs. All of them were soon looking at A's as she had her hand up and spoke. Bell's eye twitched in remark at the rabbit part as she was looking at him. His hand instinctively tightening around the handle and holding it up, aiming it a little towards her. That's the name. Rabbit fangs. It goes well. It's shaped like a rabbit's teeth. And you look like a rabbit. Suits you well. A said, as she was a bit embarrassed to come up with a name for his knife, though she couldn't deny the thought about how Bell does look like a bunny rabbit. Did you just call me a bunny and a rabbit 4 times? Bell said as he was now held up in a full Nelson by Hayden and Hogni, as he was kicking the air and swinging around the knife in hand, screaming in rage and uttering gibberish at A's, which impressed her on account how his slashes were making a pleasant breeze in the wind, needing her to place a hand in front of her skirt to prevent it from blowing in the wind he was creating. Nice distraction, A's. Sorry about that, kid. A again, she doesn't think things through and can be a bit up in the clouds. But why not come up with a different name than that blood? One. It's kind of a mouthful if you think about it. Loki said as she watched as both the elves dropped Bell on the spot. Bell then stood up and now looked the same as Hayden and Hogni in their process of thinking about her words. They really are like family. Wonder if it's a genetic thing. Loki asked as the 3 of them stopped and looked down at Bell's knife in a sad way. Unfortunately, she's right. It would be too much of a hassle to say it often. Bell, try to think of a name for it on your own. Something that could be part of you maybe. I know some adventurers put a piece of them into their weapons as a connection to them. Hayden said as Bell looked down at the knife, before looking out from the balcony up to the warm clouded skies above. Something that's a part of me. What can I call it relating to me? I don't want to make it about food. Maybe something with my dream can work. Freedom. Adventure. What is it about my dream that will leave a part of me with this knife? He thought in silence as he felt the breeze flowing through his hair as he watched the drifting clouds in the sky. Such an open sky today, almost like the sea, and like a large field of grass, stretching further and further beyond the horizon, as though it was all an endless field of the sea, the sky and the land. Just like these clouds, they are free to do as they please in the air. Endless sky, he muttered, tightening the handle on the knife before he felt a hand pressing on his shoulder, snapping him out of his train of thought. That's actually good. A fine name for a weapon for you, Hogni said as he patted the boys back happily. Otter flashing a nod towards Belle, and even earring Hayden a smile on his face. And a reassured nod from him as Belle looked down at the knife again, before seeing himself in the reflection of it and smiled. Taking the sheath he set on the table, he placed the knife back inside and was now attaching it at his left hip, tightening and assuring it was on right and testing how well it worked to pull out and resheath it. All right, now that that's taken care of, let's go on with the rest of the festival, Belle said as he pumped his fist in the air and turned around with Hogni to run off back into the streets. Ah, sorry Belle, but Hayden and Hogni need to come with me for a bit. I still have some work to do around the festival before I can be free, Freya said apologetically as she clapped her hands together, making Belle fall and looking back at his goddess with hurt and watery eyes. Goddess, why did you tease me so? I wanted to enjoy the festival with you, he said in a whimper, nearly making Freya think to drop all her plans and want to spend some precious time with Belle. But her will was strong, she needed to follow through for his sake. Unfortunately, we gods are busy around this time, mainly to double-check if things are in order, or if Hermes is fooling about again and leaving more work for us. But don't let this stop you from going on your own. This is a perfect chance to explore more of what Orario can offer, she said as Belle got up and sadly smiled at them. I see your point. And yeah, this could be fun to explore what Monsterphilia has to show. But if I meet this Hermes god, he said before violently unsheathing his new knife and holding it close to his face, half of it being covered by the blade, then I will spade and nutter his balls and force-feed him that pathetic thing that makes him a man. Never in my life have I been more proud of something until now, Hayden muttered under his breath as he watched Belle wave them goodbye and running off on his own. Though, he was scared when he decided to jump off the balcony into ongoing crowd traffic and paving his way through them all. Well, our talk was quite nice. Let's do it again sometime later. See you around, Loki, Freya said as she stood up from her chair and left, with the three following behind her as Loki slumped back into her own chair. At least she paid the bill this time. Now, what say we enjoy our lovely little date together? Before meeting up with the others, Tilda. I'm going to join him, Ace said, making Loki freeze and grip on the blonde's arm before she attempted to even reach for the balcony's railing and jump down into the street. Ace looked back at her goddess as she was surprised at how worried she was looking at her. Ace, for your sake and mine, don't get too close to him than necessary. You might not have been paying good attention, but it's clear as day she harbors feelings for that boy. Let's just go about our day. You can meet him later on in the dungeon. I refuse. I want to join him in looking around. Why? Because he seems interesting. He's odd, but also a lot like Tiona. And he didn't know who I was, she said in a soft voice, looking away at her goddess. But that wasn't stopping Loki from seeing her ears were now red and part of her face was flushed. This idiot has a crush. Is the world ending soon? She thought in horror, never expecting Ace, the girl so obsessive with dungeon diving and leveling up, to even have maiden-like feelings. Still, he is just a newbie, so it does make sense he wouldn't know who you are. And yeah, he does seem like an interesting fellow. But he has his own plans, and it would be rude to interrupt his day. So let's just dash. Let's go then. We can just linger behind and watch. Gar learn to think for once, you dumb idiot. Loki's screams were heard as she was dragged behind Ace by the collar of her white button-up shirt and creating a dirt trail as Ace dragged her along. Over time, as now Loki and Ace were following Belle, they watched him and were in a mix of focused attention and amazement of the boy. Loki could best describe him as a walking humanoid typhoon, going around stalls and eating many delicacies with such joy and without a care in the world. Even the people he passed by and in the lines he waited seemed to enjoy the kid's company and business. Loki was even surprised about girls from the Ishtar Familia line of business, walking by and talking to the kid, even flirting with him. Quite the lady killer, isn't he? Though why is oh ho ho ho, could that be? It is my little Azy Wizzy jealous? Loki said as she found it adorable the way that Ace was pouting childishly, and even crushed the creep in her hand when she saw a large Far Eastern woman in purple latex seeming to hug and talk with the boy in the line for a shooting game. This could actually work out. If Ace sees this kid with other girls, she could get the impression he's a philanderer. And that could make her take a hint not to take interest in him. My ass would be saved. Loki thought in glee as she watched Bell hand over a prize he won to the woman and bided her off before moving ahead. Yes, go bunny. Go flirt with more women so I can get A's off your back and save my ass. From Fry. Bell. This is quite the surprise. A voice rang as Bell and Loki's attention were brought over to the empty area ahead, nearby the Colosseum entrance. There stood Syr, still in her hostess uniform as she was waving on ahead, calling for Bell's attention as the boy ran towards her. Hey Syr. I didn't think I'd run into you here. Enjoying the festivities? Bell asked, as Syr giggled and began walking alongside him as they still talked. Thieving woman. Ace muttered as she was peeking behind a corner of a building, and crushed part of it to dust in her hands. So this is where you guys were. What took you so long to meet us up? Loki and A's attention were brought over to across them down the street, seeing Tiona waving both her arms at them as she, Tyon, Lefia and Filvis walked with the tomboyish Amazon towards their goddess. As the two of them stood up from crouching and meet up with them. What took you so long? I know you had a meeting, but to keep us waiting for over an hour, we had to leave to look for you too. Lefia exclaimed as Loki at least looked embarrassed about this situation, as while Ace kept her eyes on Bell. You see, honestly I did want to spend time with Ace before meeting up, but she dragged me around where it was unnecessary. Why you, the one that takes any and all opportunities to have a date with Miss A's, didn't want to? Is the world ending? She asked with a horrified look on her face and moving her gaze back and forth from Loki and A's. Honestly at this point from what I witnessed, it's possible. Say, what are you looking at Argo? Tiona asked before she followed the path where A's was staring at. And lo behold she saw Bell and Syr from the hostess Hera and Zeus as well. And being who she is, in no way would she just stand idly by. MMPH. Pausing from sharing his creep with Syr, who couldn't stop gushing how sweet it tasted when he shared it. His eyes nearly popped out of his eye sockets and almost choked, pounding on his chest before he finally swallowed his food. He broke into a wide grin and waved back. Oh aye, Orna. It's been a while since we saw each other, hasn't it? I didn't know you guys were looking around the festival too, and even with your goddess. Funny thing is, I meet up with her recently with my own. Bell said as he and Tiona proceeded with their own little wave and gestures like they did before at the pub as they waited for the rest of Tiona's group to catch up. Nice to see you all again. It feels like ages, but it's only been what? A few days, weeks, even. Hope things are going good for you. Bell said as he waved at the group as they all smiled and gave their own polite greeting. And nice to see you're doing well, Bell. I am. I hope you're having a good time with all the festivities, Mr. Cranel. Filvis said as she was slightly hiding behind Lefia. Heya, hope you've been having fun in the dungeon. From what I hear you've had quite the fun down around a certain district. Tyon said in jest as she found out what occurred, as she was still keeping her promise to help Hayden whenever she could. Though at that sudden mention, Ace grew curious and Syr laughed awkwardly with one of her eye twitched a bit. My, quite the gathering here, isn't it? The group then turned around, seeing Aina walking over and gave them all a smile, while some did wave and smile back. Bell and Tiona gave her an odd look and reeled back. Hey, why are you two looking at me that way? Aina said, flustered in embarrassment and slightly mad as Tiona and Bell held their hands in front of her, acting as a shield. I still haven't forgiven you for that trip to hell. How is it you're considered one of the nicest people working in the guild, but act like a complete sadist? Tiona said as she hid behind her sister soon after saying that. So, you're working around Monsterphilia. I need to know where so I can avoid you. Bell said, not even looking guilty about what he said. Well, I'm set to be at the Colosseum helping with admissions. But it's my lunch right now. So I thought it wouldn't hurt to take a look around the vendors for some food and to relax a bit. Aina said as that froze Bell in place, worrying the others as he looked completely black and white. You're taking a break? Bell asked slowly, dropping the last remains of his creep to the floor. Why yeah, is there something dash? Without wasting a second, Bell grabbed Syr by the hand and moved her behind him, drawing his knife and pointing it at Aina as he looked focused and with caution. taking a deep breath in and screamed, "It's the end of the world. Sadist Dina is taking a break. Everyone, duck, cover, roo-oon away. The sadist is free from her cage." He roared as his voice was heard across the area, many people pausing and looking towards him in horror, to then switch to Aina. Silence occurred before the sounds of panic and screaming. Some people running far away from wherever they were now. Others opt to get behind cover, whether it was behind a barrel or cat, or inside a building or booth. Adventurers around the area took up arms and headed around cover or near other people hiding just in case. IWH, why are you treating me like some sort of dash? Silence whore. The sadist heard and witnessed that day would never take a break, unless she was ordered to. Word has it from the guild and the staff you'd work through lunch, until it was time to go back to your sullen home alone. Who told you that? A nice receptionist named Misha. Sweet and kind girl really. Apparently, she was supposed to be a new advisor for adventurers, but apparently somebody was hoarding the workload. Damn, I could have had a nice advisor, but I got stuck with you. Bell said as he was somewhat relieved and disappointed to lose such a caring potential advisor to the likes of Aina. Ishaha. Aina growled at that name, now planning to get back at that gossip of a co-worker she's forced to work next to. SYR. Stay close. The sadist is going feral. Oh, where did you get that cool weapon, Argo? That looks so cool. Tiona said, surprised and coming closer to Bell as she inspected his knife from every angle, thankfully bringing the mood back down, and now the others were curious about Bell's new weapon. Oh, I actually got this today as a gift from my goddess. Lady Loki was there to witness it all, too. I kinda cried at getting such a wonderful gift from her. It's a bit embarrassing, but it's so thoughtful that Lady Freya was thinking about my well-being. Bell said as he was gushing and flustered about what happened earlier. Ow. That's very sweet of you, Bell. It's cute when you get flustered, and Lady Freya must have put a lot of thought and love to pick out your gift. Be sure to properly thank her soon, Tilda. SYR said as she smirked, now excited what Bell would plan as a thank you gesture. I know, I should do it soon. Maybe getting her a gift from my earnings would be the trick. Oh, me and Sis were like that too when Loki got us our first gifts. We were kinda worried. Afterwards, remember how we nearly broke her back from all the hugging we couldn't stop from giving? Tiona asked her sister as she giggles. Yeah, it took Reveria almost a week to heal her back properly. So, what kind of name did you give your knife? Have you tested it out yet? Tyon chimed as Bell was showing off the knife by giving it a few slashes in the air. There were some ideas for the name, but I instinctively called it Endless Sky. Pops said. Adventurers put a bit of themselves into their weapons and told me to think about my dream when naming it, and that's what just felt right. Whoa, a knife that can cut apart the endless sky and space so freely. That sounds so cool. I think it's rather beautiful, despite how twisted and odd the weapon seems. But somehow, it fits it perfectly. Lefia said, as she was mesmerized by the shine and runes etched into the blade and how the weapon stood out. Thanks, but I should try and find a game or something to use this knife on. Better give this a test drive before using it in the dungeon. Know any places around here that has a game for knives? Bell asked as he saw Filvis pointing back to the Colosseum behind them. Well, you'd have to pay a fee. But there's a monster fighting contest held there. It's practically the whole reason Monsterphilia exist. It started as a showcasing for monster tamers to show off their skills and commanding monsters, to then having adventures fighting monsters as a test of skills. She stated as she was surprised at Bell, once again shaking her gloved-covered hands up and down. Thank you so much for the help, Filvis. Oh, this works perfectly. Since the sadist is apparently on her word-defying lunch break, I can go in peacefully and fight them without getting put to sleep at her boring lectures and mansplaining. I'm standing right here, and I am a woman. I don't mansplain. Considering what you did to me, Huluan and Tiona, you could be a cross-dresser with magic, for all we know. Bell retorted back, as the girls saw the literal arrow now being stabbed through Aina, taking a lethal blow at her womanly pride. All right, time to dash. Asterisk boom, asterisk. Asterisk Gagrar asterisk. Asterisk Skchitri asterisk. The group and Aina turned around and looked at the rising smoke and explosions sounding in the distance. All around them were sounds of bombs and monsters crying and screeching. About. More so, Coming out from the Colosseum itself was a horde of them going off in different places. This is bad. How did the monsters get out of their cages? Lefia said as she held on to her staff tightly and readied herself. Some of them feel off. I can sense miasma and malice from a few monsters over there down by the central road. They reek of malice and vile. Philvis said as she tightened on her gloves and readied her wand with Lefia. All right, no wasting time. Every and all adventurer around. Get to evacuating as many as you can and help with the surrounding monsters. Loki said as she stood tall and commanded any adventurer nearby to begin escorting the citizens far away from here. Hey, is it me or are those silverbacks looking right at us? Tyon said as she pointed back towards the entrance to the Colosseum. They all turned and saw 4 silverbacks escaping from the hole in the building, all staring at them. One in particular was larger than the rest and had smoke emitting from his body as it snarled and pounded its chest. This is perfect. This will give me some practice. You guys can handle the other monsters that are spread out. Tiona, mind asking you to help get Syr and the sadist away from here? They could get hurt. Roger. Tiona said as she picked up Syr and carried her over her shoulder. While as for Aina, she grabbed her and carried her underneath her arm with her sticking out and soon ran off. You seriously can't think to handle that many on your own. I've heard of something from your familiar about being Allen-level stupid. Are you that stupid? Loki cried out. Heh, me and Pops handle these things when we go down to the lower end of the beginning floors. We even make a contest out of it. But now I want to see what this baby can do. And that big one there seems like a feisty one. Bell said as he stretched out his arms and squatted his knees, stretching them and grinning at the pack as he twirled the knife on his finger with the ring attachment. Besides, Philvis, you said those monsters you sensed with vile and malice were nearby, right? I think you guys should focus on them. Something tells me this wasn't just an accident and they are somewhat part of who's really responsible for this mess today. Bell said as he caught his knife and tightened his hold. Faye, fine. But this is the only time I'll take your suggestion. If things look dicey, then you better get your ass running. I don't want fry on my ass if you kick it. Let's go, Ace, Tyon, Lefia, Philvis. Loki said as she began to run towards the main road as the others followed. Suit. Have fun, Bell. You've got this. Just leave one for Tiona to join with you later. I am. Please be careful, Mr. Cranel. W will try to help you as fast as we can when we're done. Philvis said with a flushed face and ran alongside Lefia, who looked back at Bell with a worried gaze as she watched the pack soon charging towards him. Miss Ace, come on, we have to stop the monsters destroying the main street. Hurry. Lefia called towards Ace as the blonde sword princess just stood there, watching as the pack of silverbacks charged at Bell. AIZ. I'm coming. She responded as she turned and ran towards them from behind. Unnoticed to the rest of them, her running soon slowed down, slowly, but surely coming to a complete stop, not moving even when the crowd of people were running past her to escape. She stood there and turned her head back, and what she saw made her eyes widened, as her ears could only hear one thing. Laughter. Guy ha 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 ha. Let's go, you albino gorillas. Bell cried as he ran at the pack, smiling as he gripped his knife, reverse style, and was aiming at the silverback's arm as the smaller of the bunch was readying its arm to smack him. Bell moved his arm downward onto it, stepping back, narrowly avoiding the beast's fist. But the same couldn't be said for it, as Bell watched as the shine of the blade now sunk into the flesh and fur. His eyes widened in surprise, ignoring its cries as he repeated the same act. Again, he stabbed and stabbed the beast's arm in several places until it was practically dangling by a thin chunk of flesh. The blood it lost was enough to puddle at his feet. But looking down, he noticed not one speck of the blood stuck on the blade, and the runes on it were glowing purple. Hot damn. This knife really is something special. It sank into that thing's flesh like a hot knife through butter. I didn't even have any struggles pulling it out and stabbing it back in. Bell said in amazement, before craning his head back and leaped to the side to avoid another incoming fist from the other two. Come on. Help me test this beauty out more by being my testing dummies. Which is perfect. Since the 4 of you are even uglier, smellier, and probably more stupid than Alan. Bell said, as he taunted the pack as he flexed his index and middle finger at them, taunting them to come towards him as he spun the knife in his other hand. 3 of the beasts let out a menacing roar as the first one that faced against Bel held its arm tight. Hearing the growls and snarls as Bel watched it rip off its own arm, surprised it hasn't fallen off yet, and throw it at him. Bel smirked and ran towards the incoming severed limb, shining his blade and thrusted it forward like a spear, watching in amazement how the knife was cutting so well that he saw the arm being split down the center as he continued to run. Splashes of blood and some muscle fibers splashed and landed on him and his clothes, as he saw the beast once again after slicing the remains of the incoming arm. His smile never falling from his face as he wiped off the blood from his face, unintentionally smearing it a bit, as they saw the one that threw the arm charging at him again. Come on, come on, come on, come on, let's get wild dash. *slash*. Bel's excited words fell silent. His eyes widened as he saw A's, whose sword was now embedded in the throat of the one Bel would have fought and killed, even to nickname it Haughty, as it was always the first at this point to try and hog the fun for itself compared to the others. He could only watch as she slashed upward from the neck, sending the head flying before the beast's body fell and soon dissolved in a plume of black smoke. All that remained was the severed arm and the magic crystal that dropped from its death. He now met her cold golden eyes, looking back at him as she turned away and looked at the other 3, now roaring in rage, and the bigger of the bunch now pounding its fist against the ground and white steam escaping its chest and corners of its lips. You did well, but I think it's wise to allow me to handle them. Go along with the others to help. I can take care of them quick and meet you then, she said, as though this was nothing in her eyes, sounding so cold and stoic as she aimed her sword at the 3. I rather continue to enjoy the festival, so I'll end this dash before A's could even dash forward to kill the beast. She felt pain in the side of her head and her body forcibly pushed across the road, her head now hurting and now her clothes dusted in dirt and scratches from the road as she looked bewildered, wondering if they snuck behind and surprised them. But no, it wasn't the silverbacks that attacked her. Rather, she saw another beast, emitting some aura of black and red from his body as he was trembling in place, before looking directly at her, with his knife in hand and his teeth shown in a snarl. Did his eyes just glow red? And how does he have that aura? It's almost like my lil Refugadash. You absolute dumbass. Bel roared at her, startling everyone around the area as though a gust of sheet wind was blowing from his roar, even startling the silverbacks and A's by how loud and pissed he was, as it even blew her hair in the wind. Noa. You stupid airheaded bitch. What did we just talked about back with Loki and Lady Freya? What was the one thing that I said to never do to me? He roared as she blinked, trying to think of what it was they discussed during the gods' meeting earlier. Her eyes widened as she then watched as the other 2 silverbacks then made an attempt to sneak behind Bel and try to attack him. Yet, Bel didn't even focus on them. He was simply focused on her, never taking his rage-filled eyes off her. As if by instinct alone, he jumped above one of the incoming fists from sweeping him below and stabbed his knife right through the beast's head. In a second, the entire monster's body was nothing more than a black plume of smoke and a magic crystal dropped with a heavy thud to the floor. The other one growled as it tried to capture Bel in its hands, but all that it felt was nothing. Looking at his palms and only saw some of the blood from earlier smeared onto it. You're annoying. I'm trying to get this idiot to remember, Bel said as the silverback's eyes widened as it looked down at its chest, seeing Bel climbing onto it as it leapt towards its head. Ace wondered if he was going to stab it in the head again. No, this was much more brutal in her eyes. So buzz off, you stupid gorilla. She watched as he stabbed the beast's throat and driving the knife downward, slashing its throat open and majority of its chest to open and tear apart before reaching its guts, and the intestines spilled out before it was splashing blood and soon dying in another plume of smoke. Remember now, Morin. Let me remind you. Never, ever, take away my kill and adventure. And what did you just do right now? Bel screamed back at her as she shivered by what she just saw and how dark his voice sounded. I killed it. But I was only trying to dash. Exactly. This is twice you've taken my kill and fun. Something I worked hard to do and achieve, only to be taken by you. Bel said, his anger dying down as now the last one finally decided to step into the fray. though this time it was different. Its fur was turning to a dark red color, the skin becoming more of a charcoal color than the gray-purple it once was. "You are not taking this one from me," Bell stated as he looked back to her and pointed with his index finger and the knife in hand, before he was then smacked a few feet into a stall, crashing and destroying it as the silverback roared. "All right then, second wind," Bell yelled, coming out of the debris and shaking his head, ignoring the fact that he had blood leaking out from one ear, along with his nose slightly bleeding and his head was feeling a bit heavy. He ran at the beast, attempting to stab at it lie. The others, however, this one was smart, using the cuffs and chains it had on when it was still captured, as a means to block, before grabbing Bell and tossing him aside at the floor again. Ace, worried as she saw the blood stains now splashing on the floor as he bounced a few more, timed before he stopped and rolled back onto his feet. The beast then turned its attention to Ace as she readied herself, standing tall with her rapier in hand ready to defend and kill this silverback. This isn't like normal ones. It must have been enhanced. Did it transform into an alternate species of its kind? This could be troublesome. Apex silverbacks think like adventurers do, and this one might have turned to a level 2 or perhaps a level 3 type apex. She thought as she leered at the beast as it was circling around her. "Don't you dare get in my way, you blonde idiot. Hey, stupid monkey. Look," Bell cried over to them as they looked at Bell, more blood covering his outfit and body as he was now by the severed arm of the first one he fought. He had now moved the fingers of it to show it was flipping them off, and proceeded to stab it again. "See this? This was from your dumbass friend that ripped his arm off," Bell taunted as he stabbed the fingers more, making the blood spill and splash against his knife and face as that seemed to enrage the beast. "It was pretty stupid of him to come and fight me here. But look at you, still alive, and showing your hairy ass around. Here I thought you were smart, but you're just a coward." He laughed as he covered his face with more of the creature's blood as to taunt it, which worked as the silverback now was charging at Bell in rage of seeing its kind's blood smeared on him in mockery. He waited for it to come closer as Bell got behind the severed arm, waiting on top of it around the forearm part that was still attached as it came closer. "Come on, that's it. Get closer to your buddy's arm," Bell whispered as he edged closer and closer a bit to the wrist, digging his foot in the flesh as he kept his eye on the incoming beast. "Cranel. Got why, bitch," Bell said before he jumped and slammed both of his legs into the severed arm's flesh, the muscles of it working by the nerves still intact as the arm was jolted upward. The beast became startled and in pain as the arm suddenly moved and jabbed its face with the middle finger. Taking the opportunity, Bell ran up the hand and hopped on to the beast, this time moving behind it as he dug the knife into its back, slashing and cutting it open, though not moving down, however. Instead he was running around its back using the knife as a handle to guide him. The beast roared in an ungodly screech of pain, trying to swat or shake Bell off its back but to no avail, until it stood still and soon Bell saw the floor below him coming closer and fast. He ran and started to stab the creature in the back as quickly as possible, hoping that this idea he now had in mind would work. It was then the creature finally landed on its back against the pavement, a large pool of its blood now seeping around the area, and only Ace could watch it in horror as the blood was now puddling around her own shoes. She threw away her sword and ran to the monster, hoping to pull it or push it off to see if Bell wasn't there or got away. She couldn't get close enough as then the monster suddenly arched its back and legs, letting out another screech in pain, though it was clawing at its own chest, beating it as if trying to stop the pain. Ace flinched when she saw it beating itself, until what surprised her was something exploding out of its own chest, and there she saw an arm, outstretched and holding a knife, that shone in the sun's rays, dripping blood down. "See, Cranel," Ace whispered before the arm retracted back in, and the monster's cries soon growing louder, hearing the wet squelching coming from the inside of the beast, as it soon ceased its laughter and soon let out agonizing wheezing of pain. Again, she saw the arm coming from the wound now made earlier, but this time was shocked, and a little queasy, to see Bell emerging from the insides of the silverback. He was dazed and couldn't keep himself balanced as he gasped for air. The creature then vanished in a plume of smoke, and there sat Bell, atop of the silverback's large magic crystal, surrounded in a pool of blood and the monster's pelt still on the floor. A smile and a look of euphoria grew on his face as he slid down the crystal and landed on the floor, his legs wobbling and in pain, but he could only laugh and exhale deep breaths. Oh man Tilda, that was something here. Such a rush here? Hot damn, I love this endless sky of mine from Fae and Lady Freya, he said as he laughed, holding the knife in the air, before his eyes widened and looked back at the weapon in glee. Freya. Fae. Fry. No no no. Fae. He. Ha 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 ha. They rhyme. They rhyme. So well, how did no one notice that? Fry Fae. Fae Fry. Sisters. They are sisters, I tell you. Incredibly hot goddess sisters that made me a wonderful gift. He bellowed out, now, laughing as he clutched his stomach in pain and pleasure, the sickening squelch coming off of his shirt as he was drenched from top to bottom in blood. Is he high? From the monster's blood? Ace wondered, now growing very concerned for Belle, as she watched him rip off his once yellow button-up off and saw his scared laced body, watching him as he adjusted his now maroon-colored hat onto his back again before laughing. I Tilda, this is no good Tilda. Two beautiful goddesses giving me their gift as a confession. I need to be a man and respond. Tilda, how do I respond to such an ordeal? What do I give as thanks to a beautiful goddess of romance now a part of my life? And what do I give to a absolute bombshell of a tomboyish red-headed goddess that knows how to get men turning? Belle asked as he wobbled away from the crystal, still dazed and his vision now shifting from clear to blur. Belle, please rest. You're hurt badly. You can't fight anymore. Lay here while I help the others fight the monster back dash. Oh, that's right. There's another one here. With the others? Belle asked, still dazed as Ace was in front of him. Yes, but please, you need the rest. Stay put and I'll have Philvis or Leffia come to help you. What? Oh, yeah, is that right? Belle asked as his back now arched as he was facing the sky. Here, let me dash, but before Ace could settle him back down, she saw Belle's arms stretching out at his sides as though he was carrying something. His dazed look now aimed upward at the sky as his teeth showed in his grinning laugh, painted lightly with blood. Is that right? Maybe you're right. You're so damn right. Belle bellowed as his gaze quickly turned to look behind Ace, smiling as he then dashed right past her and laughed as he ran down the main road, leaving Ace behind before she gave chase to him. Oh, she's so right. There's another one down here too. This is gonna be fun. I'll go. Belle then turned as coming from one of the alleyways and catching up with him was Tiona, running alongside as she was confused and worried about why he was covered in blood and laughing. What happened? Did you get hurt? Is that your blood? She asked in a panicked tone as she was met with laughter and a smile while Belle waved his hand in a no. Nah, it's the blood of my enemies. I wore it when I was killing the last bastard. Get this, I killed him by carving inside his body from his back and slashed my way through his intestines. Belle said as he gave a descriptive way of how he won to Tiona, who now looked enthralled by his tale. Oh my gods, really? That sounds so hardcore. I have to try that next time I face a monster in the dungeon. You think that's hardcore? The other one I killed I thought was badass and even more hardcore than that. See, I stabbed it in the throat, then I dug into its flesh and carved out his chest cavity open before slicing his gut in one motion. Ah, that actually does sound hardcore. Did his intestines spill out before it died? It did, but I didn't get any drops from that one frigging rip-off artist. All that's left from those was a severed arm, crystals, and a large red pelt from it. Oh, but your stupid member is now part of my shit list. Belle said as he lightly glared at Tiona as she crooked her head in confusion. That blonde idiot stole my kill again, and on the first one I fought that dropped the severed arm. Asterisk la gasp asterisk A stole your romance again. How could she? She took your innocent second romance away and she didn't think to apologize. I'm gonna have Mimar Reveria and Tyon scold her a good one. She didn't think to apologize. She said I was too weak and should help the others here. Rude. So rude. Aze, you big idiot. Oh, it's them. I see them up ahead, and what are they? Gah! Tiona said as she and Belle stopped in their tracks as they looked ahead of them. A couple feet away was the other monsters, or now monster, that was attacking down the main road to the Colosseum. It looked like a mutated plant, mixed of that with a potted pitcher plant and a Venus flytrap, with a floral-like base underneath its large body, with multitudes of vines, with small maws that of a fly trap, coming out of it and thrashing about. But was got both Belle and Tiona's attention, was the others now ensnared by its vines. Tyon was wrapped around in several vines, entrapping her on the ground as the fly trap. Mouths from the vines were drooling over her, and noticing the steam emitting from her, steam and clothes in the process, to see that its drool was acidic and melting the fabric slowly, coating her in a clear but burning liquid across her body as the clothes were slowly disintegrating. Her breast now shined in the acid drool as well as her legs, as more vines seemed to move in between her breast and thighs, squirming and wrapping around her even more as she struggled to grab onto them and rip herself out due to the acid being slippery on the vines. And more so, in the worst position for a girl to be in, from Tiona's perspective, were Lephia and Filvis, both in the air over the creature's potted open maw, wrapped by their arms and legs, sandwiched together as the vines ensnared both of them, their legs spaced out as they tried to kick themselves free to no avail, further showing off the underneath of their skirts as they melted due to the drool. Lephia's arms were wrapped and held up over her head, unable to do anything as the vines crawled up and down her arms and left acid drool by the crook of her neck and arms, whining and flinching from the pain, as that pressed Filvis to be pushed into Lephia's petite chest, as her top melted enough to reveal her set of pale blue bra. Both elves blushing at such slimy and unwanted touching from this creature, but they couldn't break free. Filvis's arms were tied along her body similar to Tyon, though due to how Lephia and her were positioned she was forced to top her friend's body as she could feel the vines traveling up her legs and underneath her top, the acid burning against her skin as they slithered and melting her clothes, as she felt the faint breeze in the air due to her leggings now melting to holes and prayed they wouldn't melt her top as to reveal her sinful and tainted body to the others. A pervert. You all got trapped by a pervertive monster. Be Belle. Avert your eyes. Don't see them naked. Tiona yelled as she quickly hopped on top of Belle's shoulders, wrapping her legs around his head from behind as she covered his eyes even further by placing her hands on them, both of them now unbalanced and Belle now needing to try and get good footing as to avoid both of them to fall and get caught. Tiona's yell caught the girls' attention as Lephia and Filvis were now blushing to the point their faces looked as though they were hit with acid and now burned, while Tyon smirked at her sister's bold tactics on Belle. Mr. Cranel. Avert your eyes please. Why you shouldn't see me like this. I am unpure at the moment and we elves prefer our privacy when going about undressing. Filvis said, stammered, and now wanting to die to escape this embarrassment she now was experiencing. Be Belle. Please look away and what happened to you? Why are you covered in so much scars and blood? Tiona stopped bouncing and riding his head. You both will crash and hurt yourselves. Lephia asked in concern before being shocked and screeching at Tiona for her stupidity. Phrasing Lephia tilde. Riding his head. How lewd of you tilde such a sinful mouth you have despite your predicament. Sis. Keep riding his head. Though, a little help if you can. Tyon said, teasing the elf girls and smiling at her sister as she gave her a thumbs up back to her. It's the blood of my enemies and results of my training. And Tiona, get off of me. How can we fight if you're piggybacking on my head? And who cares if they are buck naked? If you're fighting, who gives a damn if you end up naked? Marry him soon, sis. Tyon whispered lowly as she smirked of how Belle thought. Hiya. Finally. So, let's carve this crap into a salad. Belle said as he shook Tiona off and charged at the creature, jumping and swaying to the side as it launched its vines at him, though he couldn't avoid it much longer as his body was wrapped around in vines. Gagha. Damn it. It burns. Belle roared in pain, still injured from his previous fight and now having to deal with acid burns mixed in with the blood now coating. His body made it all the more painful, as he squirmed and felt the acid burning parts of his skin and clothes as he was pulled into the creature's maw. We can't injure it. Regular weapons slip off this thing, and we needed to use fire and wind magic to kill it. Lephia explained as she and Filvis squirmed, trying to escape as Belle's cries of pain were growing dim and echoed a little as they watched in horror at his head entering the creature's mouth. Tiona, get something to burn the vines. Or hand Filvis my wand. Get it in her hands at least, and we can save Belle. In no way am I gonna leave you girls and Argo. Where's the staff? Where, damn it? Tiona asked as she was looking around. only to curse as she saw both Filvis and Lephia's wands, now entangled in a web of vines and the wood now smoking with acid burning against it. Filvis then looked down below, her eyes widened in fear as now the plant creature's mouth was closing around Belle's now bare ankles as the vine melted off from its acidic drool. The body now growing larger and the muffled scream of Belle was agony in her ears. "Miss Tiona, please. I hate this too much. But run. Meet with Lady Loki further. Down and get something burnable. Before Mr. Cranel dies." Filvis screeched as Tiona looked back at the body of the creature, shocked and unable to move her legs as she watched it now swallow the remains of Belle's body in its own, the movement inside reflecting of how the creature's body was shifting and emitted screaming. "Argo. Please. Hurry please, Miss Tion. I don't want to lose my friend. I can't. I don't want to leave. Argo. Argo dash. Asterisk shink asterisk." Tiona and the other's eyes widened at the sound of something sharp cutting into flesh. Lephia and Filvis panicked as their bodies moved and were dropped at the suddenly release from the vines, bouncing off the monster's bulging and warping body as they scooted away from it. And Tion, now freed, ran to her sister and brought the three of them behind her. Asterisk shink asterisk. Asterisk shkriri ahar asterisk. The monster screeched more as the knife's blade was now poking out of its body, leaking out acid to its own vines, melting it more as it cried out in pain while it was now being stabbed, full of holes throughout its body. The girls then saw Belle's hand ripping through the body, and began to stab the creature, multiple times around it from the outside and at its base floral body. As it squirmed, the holes were growing larger as it was ripping and melting itself apart. "Come on, damn it. You're supposed to die when I cut off your body. How are you still alive?" Belle growled as he ripped a part of the monster's body, his head peeking out as he was clawing his way from the inside as he still stabbed the creature, ignoring how he was bleeding profoundly and how his skin was now shown and bare, littered with blood and patches of his skin slowly melting to have blood leaking. His body, now halfway out, as the girls' eyes widened and tried to cover them when they saw the fragments of his clothes still melting away and couldn't watch, though the temptation was far too great for them to resist, as Lephia and Filvis peeked through their pinkies, while Tion covered Tiona's eyes fully with her hands as she looked away, whistling. "All right, screw this constant stabbing. Knife." Belle growled as he stumbled out of the hole he now made to escape and slashed at the creature's floral base in two, hearing its blood curdling, screeching as the acid and his cut finally reached its core, watching as it dissolved and all that was left was the crystal and Belle's sheath and blood-soaked hat on the floor. "Hey, guess Pop's idea was right. When in doubt, be stupid." Belle painted as he stumbled back up, though wobbled and his vision became blurry. He couldn't open his eyes all the way, as he felt they weighted a ton. The last he saw was when the girls called his name, turning around to see them scared and covering their faces. All he could ask was this: "Why does it feel cold around here?" Before he fell on his back, the knife dropping to the ground and embedded in it as the girls circled around him and tried to look out for anyone coming by and shield him. "Gia, quickly. What do we do? Hes, you indecent. We need to cover him somehow and get him to the hospital." Lephia said as she saw his hat and went to grab and try to place it over his lower half, until her eyes widened when she saw what was once hiding underneath those pants of his, and saw it grow. The hat couldn't even cover half of it. How was he hiding that big carrot? She screeched as she looked around, flushed in her face as steam was escaping from it and her ears as she needed something bigger to hide his lower half. "Oh, wow, nice dash. Miss Tion, please. We see it. Don't say any more and help us find something to cover him. And get a doctor." Filvis shouted as she tried to avoid looking and taking peeks at the unconscious Belle and soon saw Loki running towards them. "Girls, don't worry. I got Mama and the others coming over to Hephaestus. What the hell happened to the bunny brat? And is that real? Sis, let me see what happened to Argo Dibs." Tiona shouted as her eyes widened once she got her sister's hands off her face and became bright pink and puckered her lips as a means of her embarrassment to see her friend so exposed and her Amazon side showing at the sight of a worthy man. "Hell no. Quick, find something to cover him up at least, and get that hat off. It's not helping. Lady Loki, give him your pants. You think they'll even fit him? I don't even know how his pants hid that carrot last I saw." Him. Oh, I'll just use my robe skirt to wrap around him. Tiona said as she was about to undo the knots of her robe skirt, but was stopped by her sister who looked at her with a dull look and moved her head back to Belle and then to her sister's skirt. Your skirt is basically a giant robe with a large hole. That's not gonna help much in this case, and you're not wearing anything decent underneath, are you? She said in a low tone, to only be met with her sister looking aside with a pink blush. I forgot to do laundry, and only had my character print ones left, but Argo needs something. I can't let other husses take free peeps of him like this. Wait, I got it. I can offer my skirt to cover him. It should be fine, I have tights underneath. Phylvis said as she went straight to taking off her white skirt, showing her torn and ripped tights as she slowly inched towards Belle, completely red and her eyes shut as she looked away. You're gonna make him wear a skirt? That, I can't even, I can't. Loki's words stuttered in her own mouth, as she bit her lip and did nothing from her thoughts running rampant at the very act she was seeing. I can't unsee this. Why is this so hot? One of my girls' friend is practically stripping and showing off those nice legs of hers, and is making the bunny crossdress into a skirt. Fuck. That's so hot. And no, Phylvis. We can't dress Belle like that without his consent. It's inappropriate. Lefia said as she was also flushed at the sight of Phylvis now having stripped and attempting to get close to the exposed boy now unconscious. I agree. You aren't thinking this through. This has so many issues. Tyon said as the girls looked at her as she held up her hands and saw 3 fingers as she now listed them off. 1. We can't dress up Belle in women's clothes. It would be embarrassing and without his consent. How would you like it if Lady Loki dressed you all up like macho men? We'd probably hate it. Hey. 2. Look at the hat. And look at your skirt. Do you think it's even big enough to try and hide his carrot? Okay, stop calling it a carrot. It's not. If anything, call it a mutated zucchini. Loki said as she was looking more and more like a tomato. 3. Even if you did give him the skirt, that wouldn't stop other people from trying to take a peek underneath it. He has nothing else as protection. Tyon finished as all 4 of the girls thought about her points, as now Loki had an uncontrollable nosebleed, along with Lefia. TT then, if so be it, I'll offer MMI dash. Nope. No. That's so wrong on so many levels. Hands away from your leggings, Phylvis. We can solve this before people start coming back into the streets. Lefia said, stopping her friend from making the most horrifying decision imaginable. Girls, help me fit Argo into this barrel and then we can carry him to Dash. Lady Loki, A's, everyone. We've come with the potions and some first aid. Shit. You took them all down already. Where the hell are the why the fuck is THE? Bunny Brat naked. Beat cried out as he and the rest of the party came towards them, shocked at why Belle was on the ground naked, and why were the girls holding a skirt and hovering around him. However, he should have asked why they were now all looking at them with sharpened glares in their eyes, as though they were gleaming like golden stars, and as if he was the only one in sight, blinking slowly as he took one step back towards Reveria and Finn to see what was really going on. Get him. Hold him down and get his pants off. Just knock him unconscious and leave him in his underwear. Argo needs more coverage that. The Fleabag. Wait, YGH, get the fuck of me. Why the AG my eyes? You Amazon Gatch. Beat cried as now he was dogpiled and held, taking blows to the back of his head and face as the girls were pinning him down and now ripping him away from his pants. Soon, now gently carrying an unconscious Belle, now only half naked in Tyon's arms, as they sent Lefia and Phylvis to search for a medical-based familiar member and to inform the hospital of an incoming patient as they tried to treat him currently, while Beat was now headfirst in a barrel, with only his boxers on. Chapter end notes. Apologies for the late updates as of late. Been busy with a bunch of stuff at work and family and more IRL stuff, as well as the usual vacation trip to AX with the guys, so some planning for that has to be done. Especially, will try my best to update this and other works and stories I'll be cooking up. Thank you for all your love and support.